Okay. Welcome, members, to the 69th meeting of the Committee for Finance and the 22-27 mandate. For those of you who are watching online, you won't be seeing us because we are not in vision, but we are live from...
No, we're not live, Chair.
We're not live, sorry, we are recorded.
Recording.
The podcast version is available online for enthusiasts and superfans.
Yes.
We are at LPS Land Property Services in Belfast, where we have had a very useful hour or two of meetings and background briefings and tours. Today we're going to hear more from LPS, and we'll obviously also proceed through our normal items of business matters arising from previous sessions and other correspondence and such like. Members, as I say, we aren't live streamed today because we are at external location, but this will be recorded and it'll be available online. So anybody who, as always, you are permitted to use your mobile phone, but ideally have it on airplane mode and or silent. Agenda item 1 is apologies. We aren't able to facilitate Zoom or Teams today, so we only have one member who wasn't able to join us. That's Jerry. Agenda item 2, declaration of interests. So, members, you're always obliged to declare an interest. If you have one to start the meeting, does anybody wish to declare an interest at this stage?
No.
No. Okay.
Deputy Chair.
To Deputy Chair, yeah.
Yeah, just APS to the Education Minister.
Okay. No problem. Agenda item 3 is Chairperson's business. That's at 3.1. Members, 6 to 87 of the meeting pack. There are a whole range of budget-related documents. We have correspondence from the Minister regarding committee scrutiny of the draft budget, spring supplementary estimates and the voting account, and including a request for accelerated passage, as is usually the case. A written ministerial statement on the proposed draft budget laid by the Minister on the 6th of January 2026, and a copy of the oral statement which was delivered to the Assembly this past Monday, the 12th of January. There's also a written ministerial statement on the publication of the draft budget for consultation from the Education Minister, who laid that on the 6th of January. And lastly, there's a fact sheet on the draft multi-year budget from the Department of Education. Members, we do have an oral briefing on the multi-year budget, the draft multi-year budget. It's been scheduled for the 4th of February, but obviously now members have an opportunity to provide any initial comment or request any further information should they wish to. So if any member wishes to come in on it at this point, well, I suppose I would say, first of all, I've made comments in a political capacity about the draft multi-year budget. I would say I think it's very important that we pass a draft multi-year budget. And I think in this committee, notwithstanding comments about the quality or otherwise of the draft multi-year budget, which different political parties have, including the opposition, I think I would say we've heard a lot on this committee about how important the principle of the draft multi-year budget is in terms of planning and delivery. So I would certainly hope that we are able to get to a draft multi-year budget. I am interested at this point in finding out one particular piece of information, if members are amenable to it, which is, given we are now in a consultation period on a draft multi-year budget, there is obviously the possibility, and I think clearly there's been political commentary within executive parties about it. We don't need to labour on that at this stage, but clearly it appears now, at least uncertain, or there's a live process going on as to whether there will be a multi-year budget agreed. Can I suggest that we ask the department for what they are planning in the event that a multi-year budget is not agreed, just so we know factually what the process is, so that if they have to produce a single-year budget or what the if members are contentious, that we ask that as a contingency. Members content?
Yeah, Chair, just to add to that, one of the issues, and it's very interesting here, of course, we're causing LPS at the time. One of the issues we've had beforehand when there's been a delay in the budget has been the delay in the rating system, getting the rating bills out and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Could we ask the department what their timelines are and when their not later than dates are for specific things? Because you, Chair, you and I both know there'll be lots of sort of pieces of legislation, bits and pieces that have to go, and there's a strict timeline to do them. And it might be useful if the committee are aware of what those timings were, just in case this drags on.
Okay.
Which of course it will.
We would certainly ask those questions. I would also say we will be able to ask, given we're having an oral briefing from LPS, we will be able to ask LPS here in this room later on what their timings are in terms of getting bills out. Obviously, the draft budget makes certain assumptions in terms of the headline regional rate level, which will not be. So we can ask those questions when it comes to it. But yes, we're sure happy to ask the department that as well. Members are content. This is any other comment to make, right? We will. Can we also get agreement that we're going to schedule a briefing from the Fiscal Council once it's published its analysis of the budget, which
we've got a tentative date, Chair, of the 25th of February. They're planning to publish the day before the 24th of February. Okay. So that's our soft scheduling. We're hoping we'll stick to that. It'll be an in-person briefing. We hope Sir Rob.
Okay. If members are agreed to that, so we. I think it would be helpful for us around with that to have some additional briefings from some of what we've now got a bit of a kind of coterie of people like the Nevin Institute, who we take. I think evidence like that would be helpful just to give us a kind of an external policy perspective. If members are content that we go to some of these groups and try and, I think not for long briefings but for oral briefings that we can fit around the big ticket items.
Yeah, Chair, members might recall last year, actually it was the 24-25 budget, the committee did hear from UEPC, Pivotal and Nevin, and we kind of then wove that into the committee's overall budget report work, so members are content to just do the same process.
Members content with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so members, if we're also agreed that we will do our customary, consultation exercise with other statutory committees, seeking their views on the draft budget, and what has been allocated to their respective departments, and I suppose as part of that exercise, it would be helpful to get an overview of how much information they have had, because I imagine it might be slightly variable by department.
Thank you.
Okay, members, with that, we now move on to 3.6, which is the Balmoral show. From slight change of pace there, going from the multi-year budget to the Balmoral show. Page 88 of the meeting package correspondence with the Assembly Engagement Team regarding the Balmoral show. I think it was useful last year. I think it got us out in the real world with, not that the LPS isn't the real world, not the storm in Parliament buildings isn't the real world, even if it doesn't feel very real. But if members are content, the clerk and the team are going to go away and explore options for us to attend again. It may not be that we do a full-blown committee off-site like we're doing now, but that we have some kind of participation there. Are members content with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, grand, thank you. That's agreed. 3.7 to 3.9, we have reaction from the Construction Employers Federation press release. That's reaction to the draft budget. That's at 90 to 103. They have provided the committee with a number of budget-related documents, including their reaction. Happy if any member wishes to come in and comment on it, but other than that, if not, we will add it to our it'll be added to, I suppose, the pack whenever we come to discuss the budget again in evidence sessions. Members are content. Does anybody wish to come in? Agenda item 4, draft minutes of the meeting we held on the 10th of December. That's at page 105 of the pack. If members are content that those minutes at page 105 are a true reflection of the proceedings, I'll sign them. Content? Okay, I will sign. Agenda item 5 is matters arising. 5.1 is is a response from the Minister to the Infrastructure Committee regarding its query about allocation of capital funding in December monitoring. The committee asked for detail on the approach and rationale for the allocation of funding to, quote, high priority and, quote, inescapable bids. That's at page 115 of the meeting pack, and the Minister has come back on that pretty high level response that he has sent. Can I suggest, members, that we are kept abreast, and we have particular focus on we obviously get the outturn data anyway on a monthly basis, but obviously kept abreast of any issues in terms of getting the very large capital underspend that was reallocated at December monitoring out the door. I think it's very important. And so we should, it might even be worth us flagging that to the clerk of the Infrastructure Committee, that we want to be kept abreast of any issues in that regard, if people are content with that. 5.2 is the Department of Finance Procurement Amendment Regulations. That's at page 118 of the meeting pack. The Department has written to the committee to inform it about developments in relation to the Procurement Regulations 2024. The UK Government is proposing to make amendments to these regs via a statutory instrument laid in the Houses of Parliament using the affirmative procedure. The Department indicates that these amendments are technical fixes and do not cut across the executive competence with regards to public procurement. Therefore, the Finance Minister granted his approval to this on the 18th of December. CPD officials are due to attend committee next week and can cover any queries in relation to this. So, any member wishes to ask a question about the procurement regs can do so next week. Members are content? All right. So, Department of Finance, 5.3 is from the Department of Finance. It's at page 128, and it relates to final analysis of the consultation of divorce and dissolution of civil partnerships. At the meeting of the 5th of November, the committee received an oral briefing from officials on this consultation. At that time, the department provided a report on the initial findings of the consultation. Further detailed analysis of both the online survey responses and conventional written responses has now been copied to the committee. Members have already agreed to request updates as and when they arise or progress. Members may wish to also request that they are informed of any comments received from executive ministers on the preferred approach. So, a paper has gone to the executive, basically. But as we know from several things that have gone from the minister to the executive, they've sort of gone there and kind of entered the Bermuda Triangle of executive papers. I think it would be helpful if we are kept abreast of whether anything emerges from said Bermuda Triangle in terms of responses, or whether it is stuck in the twilight zone with rates relief changes and other issues, given particularly that these officials have done a lot of work and had a consultation. People have responded in good faith. So I think we should be kept abreast of any changes or any responses from ministers or engagement at all. Okay, 5.2, sorry, not 5.2, 5.4 is Department of Finance response to Communities Committee regarding the partnership agreement between the government and voluntary and community sector. That's at page 210 of the meeting pack. The department has replied to the Communities Committee providing detail on the fair funding principles and how these are applied to funding arrangements. This committee has been copied into the response as a courtesy. Okay. 5.5 is Department of Finance response to the Communities Committee regarding reform of building regulations. The department has replied to the Communities Committee with clarification on the current EPC rating required for new build homes, and again we've been copied as a courtesy. 5.5 again is response from the department to the Communities Committee, who have been corresponding very enthusiastically with the department regarding ring fencing of the rate support grant. That's in page 215. The department has replied to the Communities Committee with clarification on the allocation of funding under the rate support grant, which is the responsibility of the Communities Minister. Again, this committee has been copied into the response as a courtesy. 5.7 is the Department of Finance, another response to the Communities Committee. Actually, it's a request from the Communities Committee, which we have been copied into. It's confirmation, from the department that it's the Department of Finance that its officials will attend the Communities Committee on the 12th of February to discuss the work of the PAC's report on child poverty and pooling of budgets. I think it would be helpful for us to get a readout, or at least give me a way. Yeah, I suppose if they are, just because the budget pooling is something we have kind of tangentially paid an interest in, and the Children's Service Corporation Act is clearly a piece of legislation which is quite innovative, but obviously some concern about how much it's actually been used. Okay, it's to note 5.8 Dallo readout response review of arm's length bodies. So that is at page 224. Following the committee meeting on the 26th of November, members asked the department for clarity on the timeline for the review of arm's length bodies. Officials have indicated this was covered in the written briefing on the review, which was considered on the 3rd of December. A copy of this briefing has been provided again for context. The committee is due a more substantial oral briefing on the conclusion of the review, which is scheduled for the 15th of April. So so we got a letter. So our letter essentially gives us a bit more detail on where the ALB review is. I think it's useful in the sense that we were kind of told a little bit before that we should be kind of almost not quite nothing to see here, but that we didn't need to pay too much attention to it. Certainly that we shouldn't reach out to other departments. But as the next item will show, lots of the departments have come back with lots of very interesting detailed responses, and I think this is we have flushed out some interesting information. So 5.9 to 5.14, responses from executive ministers regarding the review of arm's length bodies. That's at page 229 to 244. We have correspondence from the Ministers of Agriculture, Economy, Education, Health, Infrastructure and Justice, following the previously mentioned meeting on the 26th of November. Members, we agreed to write, as I said, to all executive ministers to ask about each department's work to progress the ALB review. And we have got pretty significant responses back from, as I said, a number of departments. Not entirely, at least it is consistent. We have established that there's definitely an exercise going on in all departments, certainly those that have responded to us. And I think it's helpful that we are kept abreast of it, particularly so that we can at least hand over to our successor committee in a year or more's time a picture of what has actually happened with an ALB review, which the upshot is this thing was agreed to at New Decade New Approach, which was almost exactly 6 years ago. And what is happening now is an information gathering exercise to fulfil a commitment that was agreed to 6 whole years ago. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to try and chivvy along departments to find out what's actually happening. So that's to note, unless anybody wishes to make a specific comment on it.
Just
Yes.
Chair, there's an awful lot more ALBs than various other elements of government that have been identified by this. It might be useful if maybe we could ask Rays to do a combination of them and gather that data.
Sorry,
I think
more ALBs? You mean more ALBs than you thought?
Yeah.
Well, can I suggest, I think we're still outstanding a few...
Yeah, I think we should.
Chair, also, if you look back on the Justice response, it indicates that and infrastructure as well, it indicates that they're not actually expecting a report to be finalised until the end of April. So us scheduling for the 15th might actually need to slide slightly.
Thinking that a bit.
Yeah. So
we'll probably look at moving that into May.
they all, actually, to be fair, they all kind of remind us, all three of these letters, even Health talks about the end.
We'd originally
April.
hoped for something a bit quicker. Although, Chair, it is very helpful that the departments have all written back, because I believe DOF did tell us not to write. But they've all responded, which is incredibly useful. So if members are content, we look at sliding that into May, just because the report will then hopefully have been finished. We liaise with DOF officials just to make sure everything's been done so that the briefing is worthwhile. Thank you.
Okay, are people content with that? At least the Health have actually provided us with just a very helpful table of all their bodies, which are really obvious ones. It's the trusts and the Public Health Agency and the like. But anyway, okay.
Chair?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry,
Chair.
do we have a list of all ALBs by department?
I'm not aware of
Could
where...
we get that?
We could do, because I'm just now looking to the end of the room and thinking DOF must have such a thing, but we will
I've
follow
definitely
up
seen
with
one. I have definitely seen one.
Yes,
in our pack,
yes.
and I think in this version of committee, I have seen a full list of arms.
We've done that.
That definitely does exist. That shouldn't be due to.
Yeah, will do.
Very certain that I've
We'll
seen
get
somewhere.
that.
No,
Okay.
just through the chair.
And that'll complete the exercise. We can just write this. You don't need to worry at the end of April. It's just here on a table.
No, just through the chair. That's what I think I was looking at, because there were some of the ones that were in the previous list we had. There's more on. I think they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't do the lower level.
Do you mean
ones.
on the health one? There's more.
Yeah,
on.
there's a couple of health ones there that hadn't previously been in, and it's just to.
So there are a couple of health ALBs on the Annex A of what
Yeah.
they've sent us that you weren't aware of before.
Yeah.
What, like? Which one's the?
No, I knew they existed, but previously hadn't been reported to us as ALBs.
Okay.
I think this is going it's the nature of the review. They're going
down.
right
That's
up.
the point I'm trying to get to, because they're now beginning to look down and see what actually is an ALB.
Sharon, it might be useful to share the list with the other committees, because I suspect nobody else has seen it.
Can I just ask one other thing? And it probably will. Yeah, it'll be somewhere else. I presume this is what the definition of an ALB. Is it something that has a chief executive? Is it something that has...
Broadly, yes.
Yeah, it's its own...
They're obviously slightly different types. However, with the changes that were made to accounting rules in 2022, I'm just going to say, they're all listed now as part of the budget. So they will all have a greater... there's a greater ability to scrutinise budgets. That's what I'm trying to say. So there should be a greater awareness of them amongst the other committees. But they'll see these responses, but I think it would just be helpful when we get the full list, just to circulate it to everybody so they're fully aware.
Okay. Grand. Okay, members. So 5.15 is a more direct reader response. It's a composite of the of what we asked for from between September and December 25, which have not already been dealt with. So it's for members really to see everything that we haven't got back yet, and what we are what we're outstanding. So, for example, we asked the department which departments did not meet the deadline returns. Some of these are things which are slightly frustrating because they become slightly backward-looking and irrelevant, but our team are kind of forced then to hold on to them. So we asked way back when, or in November, we asked which departments did not meet the deadline returns for the December monitoring. December monitoring has itself already been and gone, so it's just frustrating that I presume that's a straightforward request. Other more substantial things, I think, are a bit frustrating. We asked for a written briefing on on what was happening with the local growth fund, which is a subject of interest to all of us, all representatives, and indeed all local authorities. We asked for a readout of the meeting between the Finance Minister and the Secretary of State, not the Northern Ireland Secretary of State, but the Minister of Housing, Communities and Local Governments. We still haven't got that yet, so we would like a readout. Now, the readout might just be that the Minister repeated his position and the executive position, and the UK Minister repeated the British Government's position, but we'd still like to just clarify those things so our team don't have to hold on to them. Okay.
Just if members are content, we have had offers, obviously, from one, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, but also the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, to push things if we haven't received responses. If members are content, that we highlight that to both those places, both those sources, and we see if we can get that pushed along. Yeah. So we wanted to give them lots of time, but there's lots of time and lots of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of them obviously have kind of been superseded by events, including the multi-year budget one. Okay, members, so 5.16 is a DALO readout response relating to the Pathways to Work Green Paper. It's page 253. We request a detail of the pathways, we request detail of funding available as a result of the Green Paper. I think we requested that way back in October. The Department has indicated that the Executive received an additional 2.8 million through Barnett when DWP received funding to deliver elements of this Green Paper. As members will recall, Barnett consequences are unhypothecated. It is for the Executive to decide how they are allocated in line with other local priorities. Other elements of the Green Paper due to be delivered through the spending review settlement. The Executive has received an additional 78.6 million resource DEL between 26-27. So that's is the 78 million specific? That's over the 3 years from the Green Paper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but the 2.8 is for 25-26.
Yeah, it was a consequential.
Yeah, it's a consequential, but just for this in this financial year. Now, this was all consolidated in December monitoring, or before? Yes. The Executive received an additional 78.6 in resource DEL between 26-27 and 28-29. The Department indicates it is not possible to identify how much of this is directly attributable to the reforms set out in the Green Paper, as the Barnett formula is applied to the aggregate change in a Whitehall Department's budget and the spending review rather than the individual measures. So that's just to say that. I suppose what is interesting to us, I suppose, from a budgetary perspective is the department will be finding out. I'll bring Brian Kingston. The department will be finding out about Barnett consequentials. I presume that lots of times when we don't necessarily find out about them, I think it might be better practice for us to ascertain, because we have to. As I understand it, unless I'm wrong, what we tend to do is it's part of our job, but we tend to have to remember to ask if there's a Barnett consequential from a specific UK government announcement, rather than be told it automatically. Should we be asking as a committee to be told when some new Barnett arises, or are there just too many of them for it to be practical?
Chair, in practice, I think you're talking lots of amounts at lots of different stages. We tend to be notified once there's a consolidated amount that is shifted through either a monitoring round or an estimates round, where it's more of a block, and we see bigger shifting. I think, Chair, what might be useful is finding out from DOF just how much traffic there is and what they do with it. Whether they,
I think it might be helpful for us as an exercise, so that we understand as a committee how, because I think we sometimes operate and we communicate, and that the Barnetts only happen at fiscal events, but they don't.
No, they come very regular.
And they happen. So I think just as an exercise, like almost a study exercise, it would be helpful to know. And they may think we're asking the question in a stupid way, but that's fine. They can give the answer to us in a more intelligent way if they think it's a wrong question. How many individual? They will obviously be able to tell us the amount of in-year additional allocations in resource and capital, but it'd be helpful to know that, obviously, which we get from looking at end-year data, but also how many individual consequentials were there in year. I just think it's helpful for us to know, so we have a sense of how regularly it's happening. And obviously we know that they're awaiting Westminster supplementary estimates or spring estimates. Brian, so what about Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I'm always very interested in this Pathways to Work statement. At the time, I think a lot of the media focus was on the changes in the criteria for PIP payments, but there was within it, because it's called Pathways to Work, it's meant to be about helping people into unemployment and providing extra support. And I think the government at the time talked around £1 billion, to support. So reference what you were saying earlier about the local growth fund, and we'll all have been aware of the reduction in funding. What was originally ESF funding became shared prosperity funding, and groups just before Christmas received letters letting them know that there'd be a 64% cut in what they could apply for in this forthcoming financial year. So they're trying to work off 36% of their budget. So a lot of redundancies are going to have to be planned, and then a reduction in service for people needing extra support to help them into employment, people with disabilities, and just other factors in their lives which just require that extra support, particularly at community level. So this has been raised at some of the old party groups that I've attended by groups directly. So, the very small amount in the current financial year, 2.8 million, seems to have come through as a Barnett consequential. So the question really is to the Finance Minister. I don't think this featured in the 3-year budget lines that I saw.
Well,
the question, well, nothing specifically in terms of support for the local growth fund, because as we know, a lot of it is now the majority is going towards capital rather than revenue. So I would like to ask that question about, because this was never funded from government. It was ESF, it was shared prosperity. It is funding from Westminster, not through the block grant. But what more can be done to support those groups in that economic and activity work, supporting people into employment?
So I don't think it's a bad question. I suppose to be careful, is it definitely our question to ask, because we're probably getting onto a question, like a policy question for the Department of Economy and the economy committee, I suppose.
Responsibilities, you could say it's between economy and communities is where economic and activity actually sits, tied in with disability. But ultimately, it's not something which has been funded as part of that department's budget. I would like to put the question back to the department, to the Finance Minister, about what extra funding can be found to support this work.
So I suppose what question we could ask,
and it's relevant to this sorry, cut across, Chair. This
Okay.
green paper
No.
pathways to work, because there's extra funding coming through there.
Your question is, why did you make the decision, or did you not make the decision that this? So Barnett funding is never hypothecated, or in extremely rare circumstances, and it's not Barnett. Then it's just ring fence treasury money for something or other. This is 78.6 million. This has gone into the, executive. Effectively, it's being allocated to other executive priorities, or it's part of the broader executive pot. I think that's the question we want to ask: is was any consideration given to, or was there a bid from either the Economy or Communities Department to specifically hypothecate this towards employment support? Is that the question?
Yeah, and just what are we doing collectively, to support this important work?
It's not that I don't want to ask that question. It's just that that's not necessary. Like we could then get into every single potential priority for the finance minister, and I suppose it isn't necessary. There is a degree of him. He takes bids from individual departments to. So, but can I suggest we start by asking: was any consideration given, or was there any bid made to use this just under £80 million resource for employment support?
Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Then what we could then do is, if we get it back saying no consideration was given, no one bid for it, we can then correspond with the Economy or the Communities Committee to say why not.
Yeah.
Happy enough with that?
Yes, but it's just that there's no allocation towards it, in the 3-year budget. It doesn't feature as a line. And I think there is the potential for funding to come through from Westminster.
I don't disagree that it's a thing that should be funded. Okay, well, we'll ask that question.
Yeah.
But we'll ask that question because I think then we'll be able to ask, once we get that information back. So my concern would be, if we just ask the question, why didn't you fund this? The finance minister will say, maybe not unreasonably, well, I get a load of headline bids in from individual ministers. I then, apart from some specific things that we agree, I then allocate an amount, and it's for the Economy or Communities. And he could just say, well, I'm giving them all this money, they can allocate it. So I think if we ask the question first about the 79 or just under 79 million, then we can proceed and ask more specific questions of that, if you're content. Members content with that? Okay. So, right. 5.17, I'll read out response in relation to the Water, Sustainable Drainage and Flood Management Bill from the meeting on the 12th of November. Page 254 of the pack. So, members, the committee requested further detail on safeguard controls for the bills, the financial aspects of the bill's provisions. The department has indicated that any funding required will be for DFI to identify and progress, and on corresponding new approaches to new and existing future policies by DFI. This committee had asked for detail for to inform its response to infrastructure's call for evidence for the committee stage of the bill. So members content will forward the response to the infrastructure committee to inform its deliberation on the bill's committee stage. For content. 5.18 is the Dallet Reader response related to shared property management. That's at page 255 of the meeting pack. The committee requested definitive timelines and clarification regarding the work on shared property management. The department has underlined the consultation and the OLC work will take place in 26-27 with a bill drafted for introduction in the early part of the next mandate. The inclusion or otherwise of housing executive/association properties is within the remit of DFC and would be decided upon by that department. So, members, just to note, I suppose one thing I would say is I think this is just really urgent. I've several examples in my constituency where people are really crying out for there to be regulation of this. My slight worry would be, obviously we're now a little over a year left of this mandate. I suppose I would be slightly concerned that this drafting is happening in 26-27. That feels like a vague enough timeline that I don't know. I'm just worried about further slippage, to be honest. But in any case, and I thought that would worry me. Particularly because obviously this has been going on for years now. Okay, but if members are content, no one else wants to comment on it. 5.19 is a Dallet readout response in relation to the Minister's round table on banking. Minister, so I'm glad we asked for this, and we did sort of have to ask for it. I think we should be, particularly given the proactive, positive work this committee has done on banking, I think we should be getting this stuff as a routine. The committee requested a readout from the roundtable held on the 3rd of December. The meeting was attended by a wide range of stakeholders, which included the Financial Conduct Authority, the Financial Services Union, Consumer Council, Cash Access UK, the Irish League of Credit Unions, Link, Post Office, Disability Action, National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, Rural Community Network, Retail NI, UK Finance and the Northern Ireland Council for Voluntary Action. The roundtable provided, according to the Department, a valuable platform to discuss key issues and developments around cash, access to cash and banking services impacting local communities, particularly as the access to cash rules continue to embed and ahead of the formal rules scheduled for the end of 2026. To shape the conversation, organisations were entitled to complete a short online survey. The results highlighted several issues across the following themes: regulation and legislation, awareness and managing change, and financial and digital inclusion. These are very broad themes, I have to say. So they were discussed by a whole range of people from those issues. I would say, members, that I do want us to be kept fully abreast of anything and everything that is happening. I think are several of the issues that came up were discussed in detail by our committee. I also think that, you know, some of what we got back from the finance minister was like, well, kind of, you know, will it's not devolved, and that's fair enough. But he is still convening this, so I think we need to keep on it to understand what the key actions are. Yes, we are going to get the report. Thank you for flagging that to me. But I think I think it's really important that we keep on this one. And they have, when they do provide a report, they're going to give us it on the right table, which is good. So I think we need to stay on that and keep engaged on it, particularly because we produced a very clear and I think positive report, which had lots of specifics in it. And I think it's because it's not devolved, and because we know some of the stakeholders don't automatically think about this place with the top of their agenda. I've noticed people like the FCA and UK Finance. We need them to feel a bit of essentially the pressure of us corresponding with them and pestering them and talking about it. Okay, but I think that's really. I would hope it's a positive sign that that our talking about it and flushing out some of the issues is having an impact. 520 relates to the rate rebate earmark budget. That's relating to something that came up on the 3rd of December. It's page 258 of the meeting pack. The committee requested background to this forecast pressure and its evolution. The department has indicated how it evolved, which was due to the acceleration of universal credit migration earlier than planned and consequential impact on rate rebate applications. So members, the department has not addressed the committee's query in relation to this. I should go back and read a bit more of this. I'm trying to skip over it, but I can't because there's detail that needs to be read out. The department has indicated that in tandem, DFC has a reduced requirement due to changes in legacy benefits and are transferring this easement to LPS. The department has not addressed the committee's query in relation to the situation being considered, quote, normal at this time of the budget cycle. So I suppose it would be helpful to understand if there's any long-term plan to regularise that, Deputy Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd raised this query because it was coming through in the monthly outturn reports as about an £8 million move within the DOF return, which is significant in terms of the DOF finance, and we'd be keen to support going back on it. I do think that by how it's been described, that it's related to how they're allocating funding between DFC, DOF for the rates rebate. Obviously, the migration of the universal credit is not normal, but at the same time, even though that's been accelerated, I would have thought those that were on a legacy system and then those moving to UC would all have been subject to the same rates rebate. It's just moving them onto a different system. So I'm a little bit confused as to just the details of it. So I would be keen to go back and not just ask is this situation being normal, but even if we could expand it a little bit further to say, were there more rebates picked up following the migration, or was it just the same amount of money but just allocated a different way because of the process?
So I wonder if Andrew McAvoy will offer some clarity. He's not here in the room right now, but he is his name is there and it's going to be in front of
All
us
right.
fairly soon.
That's
So we could
what you're
ask
pointing
him.
to there.
We could ask the LPS, and if not, we can follow up. Members are content with that? Okay. And then after that, we will ask if we don't get clarity from LPS here, we can ask the department to clarify for us. 521, another DALA readout response relating to capital DEL allocations to the Department of Education. The committee requests to detail these allocations and a breakdown of allocations made to Irish medium accommodation and facilities. This is page 250. If members are content, we will copy this to the Education Committee. 522 is correspondence to the Minister of Finance regarding investment in the Supporting People programme. That's at page 261 of the meeting pack. The Communities Committee has written to the Finance Minister to highlight issues relating to the independent support people providers. This committee has been copied into correspondence as per protocols and can expect to be copied into response. So note. 5.23 Executive Office Consent Motion Tracker. The Executive Office Committee has provided correspondence to the Executive Office Committee has provided correspondence to us. Has provided correspondence to us from the Executive Office regarding use of the Legislative Consent Motion Tracker. The Executive Office has indicated that it holds fortnightly meetings with UK government officials and other devolved governments to discuss relevant bills and raise issues where necessary to the Executive. And we are talking about 2 LCMs, I believe, later on, so that is relevant. Okay. 5.24 Justice Committee. This regards this is correspondence to the Department of Finance regarding handling of legal complaints in Northern Ireland, page 266. The Justice Committee has written to the Department of Finance for comment on issues raised by an individual regarding the handling of legal complaints. The committee has been we have been copied in this correspondence. It's to note. We've copied to the correspondence as a courtesy. 5.25 Head of the Civil Service, issues and responsibilities regarding the Code of Ethics. Members of page 271 of the meeting pack, the Head of the Civil Service has provided further detail and information relating to responsibilities regarding the NIC Code of Ethics. That's to note, albeit I should say I received in parallel correspondence as in my own or not in my committee capacities. I have some considerable concern about some of what was in the correspondence, but I suspect we will return to it later whenever we deal with civil service matters later in the term. Unless anybody wishes to come in on that, I have some significant concern about it.
I should have made a declaration of interest. I've been raising AQWs on this issue for the best part of 9 months now, and I haven't had any reply yet. So there's about 4 or 5 AQWs on it, but I just raised that as a...
I don't think that's an interest. You can just come in and say that, Steve. I think that's fair enough. That's just you pursuing a policy, but that's probably very...
I just thought I'd mention it anyway.
But you're right, but it's on the record, so you can...
Good, thank you.
Whether it's an interest or a comment, anyway. 526 is relates to the lighting of Parliament buildings, page 277 of the meeting pack. The committee previously wrote to the Speaker to request that Parliament buildings was lit up on an annual basis to mark Baby Loss Awareness Week, and that a display was constructed in the Great Hall to mark this week. Whilst the Speaker has indicated that the committee's correspondence will be brought to the Commission's attention, he has set out some initial thoughts on the proposals. So, if members are agreed, the Clerk will continue to engage with the Commission and the Speaker's office on the committee's requests around lighting the building up for Baby Loss Awareness Week. If members are content. 5.27 is a WMS to the Assembly relating to the draft Executive Early Learning and Childcare Strategy. That's at page 281 of the meeting pack. The Education Minister laid a WMS in the Assembly on the 17th of December regarding the draft Executive Early Learning and Childcare Strategy. A copy has been provided for members' information. I think it's probably worth saying, since it's been said by the Education Minister more than once since he took over, he doesn't believe that his draft multi-year budget is enough to cover what's in that strategy, and that will be something that obviously we and other MLAs will unpack in the weeks and months ahead, but he's been fairly robust about that. And I presume his position would be that strategy can't be delivered, or can it, perhaps, I don't know, with a budget in the multi-year budget, but that's to note. 5.28 is from the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. The committee previously, and it's at page 286, the committee previously wrote, to the CST and Secretary of State regarding the weighting of the local growth fund towards capital rather than resource funding. This is absolutely critical. Obviously, the CST replied indicating his office is committed to continued engagement with stakeholders to help support the design and delivery of a package of funding that delivers the greatest impact to growth. He also indicates that following the recent Pride in Place in England, Scotland and Wales, corresponding funding will be trick of the tongue there, will be allocated in Northern Ireland, which, quote, will be able to be used more flexibly now. I think I'll bring in others in a minute. I think it's really important that, so there's some useful indications that they get it. You can't claim that you are engaging with NI stakeholders about this fund and being anything other than complete unanimous, recipients of the insight that providing this money as capital to L is terrible for the way our community and voluntary sector work here and the way it has historically worked. Literally nobody thinks that the way the UK government is proposed to do it is the right way to go. But we need to understand whether there's actually going to be change and whether, when we're going to find out about this, the new flexibility, and indeed whether this will be anywhere near the requisite amount that's necessary. So, members, we do also await, as I say, a readout, as I talked about earlier on, from the Finance Minister on his meeting with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland and the Minister of Housing, Communities and Local Government, which was 2.5 months ago now, late October. So can we also ask, basically, if the Finance Minister has heard anything more about the Pride in Place announcement? Because if we're hearing about it, then they definitely should have heard about it. And are they pressing for urgent clarity? And I don't know whether NICFA, among other organisations, have heard anything more about it, but I think we need to hear more as soon as possible. Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And as we're looking at this, as Brian previously said, as the local growth funds moving forward, it's been catastrophic for the sector. And I wonder if we, to build on what you say, could also either address the Secretary of State directly, but just to ask in terms of the Pride in Place announcement, will the design and allocation of it be on the same basis as the rest of the growth fund, which it has been through the NIO directly? Deciding and applying on how that will be split, or will the Pride in Place be set out some different way? And given that it's coming through, we've got this from the Chief Secretary to Treasury, it would be good to seek that clarity directly from the Secretary of State if we haven't had anything through the department yet either.
Yeah, I suppose, so just to read out what it says specifically in that, it says, following the recent Pride in Place announcement in England, Scotland and Wales, corresponding funding will be allocated in Northern Ireland, which will be able to be used more flexibly. I presume that means resource rather than capital. Alongside the local growth funding, this ensures the full amount of funding announced in the spending review can be tailored to Northern Ireland's unique economic circumstances. So I think, yes, we need... I would say what we could do is respond to the... Not that I'm not... do two things. Respond to the Treasury Minister to say, does this, just to be, thank you for your letter, but does this specific paragraph mean that it will all be able to be used as resource? And then either copy the letter or send a parallel letter to the Secretary of State to say we need this information ASAP.
Chair, thank you. It's just where they're saying more flexibly. I would be keen to understand, is that more flexibly at the discretion of the Secretary of State or to the Executive and the Finance Minister?
Yeah, I would assume it's the Executive, because in one sense the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland has no direct, generally speaking, whenever the Executive's functioning, whenever there's restoration talks, if the thing comes, he does or she does, but usually it's when a budget happens, it's directly between Treasury to Finance. So you would imagine he doesn't, but we can certainly ask that question, and who determines this flexibility. So if members are content, this letter is dated the 19th of December, so it's just before Christmas. I presume we ask, have Finance heard what more about this means? They may be able to tell us quickly, actually, that might supersede the readout we're due from October. And maybe go back to the Treasury and say, to be absolutely clear, does this mean...
That's for two fronts, and then we'd see what...
Yes, exactly. Remember, content?
Just to clarify, Chair, are you saying that whether this funding is allocated to the Executive for it to decide outspent as a block grant, or whether as whether the case with local growth funding, whether it comes for a specific purpose or else it's controlled from Westminster by, I don't know how you pronounce it, MLUG or whatever.
Yeah, it's more. It's particularly, I think, whether it has to be capital or resource. I think it's the major. I think I'm saying. I think that's the major. It's not necessarily that they're saying you have to give it to this group or that group or spend it. It's that the big concern has been that it has to be spent on capital, and obviously you can't use capital. The problem is if it was being used for example, employment supports, which employment support or local economic growth purposes, and you want to use it to pay staff members, you can't if it's capital. So that's always been fundamentally the challenge here. But we'll ask that question. We don't need to kind of more flexibly. We need to understand specifically can it all be used. I mean, the upshot is the reason they're doing this is because historically a lot of that type of employment support it goes through different routes in England. And also, they want this money to go on capital because I think I'm right in saying capital is more, as it were, growth generative. It's better because it intends to involve more investment spending. It is more investment spending, but I don't think it's a point of principle about how we do it in Northern Ireland, to be quite honest. It's just getting the answer clarified.
Yeah. So,
Chair,
so are we writing both to Treasury and to the Department?
Yes.
Or to the Minister? That's fine. No, I think we should ask them both.
And I think we need to get quick answers and try and clarify. Unless they've already had answers, Nick Fair, but I'm not aware they have.
Yeah.
It's been a revelation.
Very good. This is Mr. Murray, yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, we should maybe write and ask him for loads of other things.
Next time.
Okay. Members content? I think people understand what we're... right. 5.29 to 5.31 is correspondence to and from the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee. That's the House of Lords Scrutiny Committee. That's at page 289 to 298. There are 3 items of correspondence relating to scrutiny carried out by the House of Lords Scrutiny Committee. One relates to Trader Support Service, one in relation to carbon border adjustment mechanism, and one relates to Northern Ireland and EU Council proposals. We have been copied in as a courtesy, but members may find them useful for their own any other work they are doing on these matters. So useful nevertheless. 5.32 is a response from the FCA on our, it's quite a big and important one, on our, the letter isn't actually that big, but it's still an important one, on the financial services landscape. The FCA has provided a response to it indicating they are keen to continue engaging with the committee and all other stakeholders. So there's not actually a huge amount of policy detail, albeit the FCA have been over here at least once or twice since we've been. Certainly they have, I think, a permanent member of staff based here, yes. But they have said more senior people over, not that person isn't, useful and important, but they've had sort of direct level people over since then, and I had a meeting with them just ahead of a committee meeting. I think we want to continue to be kept abreast of all the actions they are taking. So I think if members are content, I'd like to write back to them saying, we appreciate your response. We've talked about all of the things that we want action on or we want attention to, access to cash, questions around banking hubs, cross-border considerations, increased rurality, cash reliance. We don't just want you to note that they're happening. We want to be kept abreast of everything you're doing to address them, including in conjunction with the Ministers' Roundtable, if members are content. I think it's going to be important that we just keep on this issue and keep pestering and keep pressing so we make progress on our own recommendations. Okay, 5.33 is from Advice NI and it relates to the removal of the two-child limit. Advice NI has written both to the Finance and Communities Minister asking for clarification and assurances around the removal of the two-child limit in Northern Ireland. We will be copied into response in due course. I think it's really important that we are kept abreast of this and that we understand how this is going to happen. We were told that that this was the reason we couldn't scrap the two-child limit here in Northern Ireland, despite benefits being devolved was obviously that we would then be super parity, and the cost would not be supportable or not be deliverable. So we need to understand when it's going to happen and precisely how it's going to happen.
Chair, I just wanted to venture that I'm aware that the Communities Committee has had some correspondence, I think, from the Minister on this.
Okay.
And may be in a position to actually give more information to this committee if members were content, perhaps, that the committee writes to the Communities Committee just to ask what it is they've been made aware of in terms of this. I have a feeling the Minister has given some indication of the way this might be done. But it would just be useful to know how that's going to work. If members are content to do that.
Yes. So I was just double checking for mine, which I thought was correct. Yeah, it is due the new tax year in April this year, 3 months' time. It's due to less than 3 months' time. Is when it's due to officially end. And you need to be absolutely clear that's going to happen in Northern Ireland too.
Yes.
I haven't actually seen that specific assurance or commitment being given, but it might have been, but I might not have seen it.
Been said, I'm aware from just awareness generally of what's going on in other committees, but
Okay.
it would just be useful to get into.
Okay. Brian Kingston.
Yeah, I think it is in the questions there that have been posed in the correspondence. But what is the additional financial implications? So yeah, I mean the Westminster decision to end the 2-child limit just means that our local undertaking, the mitigation against the benefit cap, means that the amount that certain families with more than 2 children are entitled to is increased. So that is an increased mitigation. So there is a cost to the block grant. I think in the realms of £10 million, but I think we should ask that, just to be aware of the consequences because of the mitigation that we have here in Northern Ireland. But I think that specifically is in the questions, but I think that's important for us to understand.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we still need to, given the position been that the UK government, this is effectively a UK government policy decision, and now they've changed it. I think we need to know that the executive is going to follow suit ASAP. But we will ask that question.
But in GB, because of the benefit cap, whilst they've removed the 2-child limit for certain families,
yes,
that will still have a cap on how much benefits, whereas Northern Ireland were mitigating against that. So all families will, with more than 2 children will get a benefit from it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We will find out exactly what the plan is, including what the plan is for legislation. I think it would be helpful if they can give us an answer by next week.
And the consequence to the block grant, for us to understand that.
Yes. Yeah. Consequence to the block grant. Not that that's not important. It's also important to people.
No, but
think
in terms,
here.
it does have an impact on other funding for other public services.
Sure does, of course. But we also need to know that if you're like people who anybody out there in the public in Northern Ireland who their family or somebody who is affected by it will.
Yeah. Oh no, that political decision is.
That this is going to be.
Oh no, absolutely, that decision's been made.
Deirdre.
I wasn't sure if I picked up on the thing to get clarity as well. Then either from the committee or the Communities Minister on that mitigation runs to March 2028. So is there work being done now?
Yeah.
Around extending that beyond that period?
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. We can ask that too. Yeah. Okay. Members content with that? Grant. Now, we're going to go on to the tabled pack. So 5.34 relates to the Department of Finance January in-year technical exercise. That is a brilliant bit of jargon there. Fair play to the officials that came up with it. Not a monitoring, it's an in-year technical exercise. It sounds like a New Year's resolution. I'd make sure that the officials do proper stretching before they engage in their in-year technical exercise. We're all getting older. This is page 3 of the tabled pack. The department has provided the committee with a briefing paper on its January in-year technical exercise, which provides detail on its position following the December modelling round. The department advises of a reduced requirement to fund the earmarked resource pressure for the rate rebate budget and resultant non-earmarked reduced requirements. The department also highlight a reduction in the over-planning position in the capital budget, the surplus of which is being allocated to IT Assist for spend on IT equipment. Departmental officials are due to attend in the coming weeks to brief members on the departmental position. So this is I should say the departments in your technical exercise. So all departments are doing this. So this is just the department, but this specific item is about the departments in your technical exercise. And yeah, but the minister did indicate that there would be a further. He called it a fiscal. I don't think quite you would call the spring estimates a supplement or the supplement, whatever they are, whatever estimate it is at Westminster. I don't think that's a full-blown fiscal event, but
the minister indicated that he didn't expect a huge amount coming out of that.
Yeah,
but there will obviously be some funds. The department did indicate that this January in-year technical exercise would happen, and I suppose it's a case, Chair, of trying to make sure that monies that move during the December monitoring are being used as indicated, because we are very much into that tail end of the financial year.
Steve Aiken?
Just a quick one. I've noticed that they've got the sale of Victoria Hall came in at 1.5 million. Seems a bit light for a big building in the middle of Belfast. Yeah, I just sort of sat out at me there.
Is that on the tech? Is that in this item?
Yeah, it's sort of capital position. The overall planning position was reduced by the fact they managed to sell Victoria Hall, but for 1.5 million. That's a big building.
Really worth having a look at.
Deputy Chair, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Previously, Chair would asked for a wee summary note on all of the assets that were disposed of. I haven't seen anything come through on that. Maybe we could ask for that.
Summary note on what, sir?
On whenever something's been disposed.
Yes,
from
that's true. Yeah, we did.
Civil Service estate.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah, we do need an update on Victoria Hall. It doesn't necessarily say, though, I suppose, not that I'm overthinking it. It says the over-planning position was reduced by 1.5 million following the sale of Victoria Hall. It doesn't say that they got 1.5 million for Victoria Hall.
Yeah, but
may just be they've used 1.5 million of that money for the purposes of. Anyway, we'll ask the question, and yes, we should have. If the position is that we should be told whenever there is a disposal.
Good news, Chair, is we know who the people now to ask for the rateable value of it, couldn't we?
Yeah, indeed. Okay. So, members, we're now going to go into our oral briefing. We have we're in LPS, so we better not ask anything too rude. We have we've got a briefing paper at page 306, and the LPS Corporate Plan at page 320 of the meeting pack. Oh, is it? Okay. Yes. We won't do loads of formal introductions, but thank you. Welcome. Well, we won't welcome you. You've already welcomed us.
Yep.
So we're kind of in your patch. So thanks for having us, I suppose. Everyone at LPS, Sharon, Chris, Colm and Andrew. But for the purposes of the record, we welcome Colm Doran, who's Director of Transformation and Corporate Support, Chris Rooney, Director of Revenue Benefits at LPS, Andrew McAvoy, Director of Rating Policy, and of course Sharon Gallagher, who's the boss and head of LPS. We've had a really useful time here at LPS. We had an initial briefing. Thank you very much. We found it very interesting. It's obviously good for our department, given a lot of what we do is strategic and kind of at times theoretical. Other departments get out and look at other committees, spend a lot of time on public service delivery. We do a lot of strategic stuff, which is extremely important, but getting into see the civil servants who are actually sending out bills, collecting rates, planning, managing the ordnance survey maps is just so useful. So we really appreciate you having us here and facilitating us and giving up some of your day. And we also appreciate us having a briefing, which isn't nice, so you can swear and then we can will bleep it out for us afterwards. But we are. I don't know if that's part of this. They might charge us extra if we do that. Anyway, but thank you very much. And obviously, we're keen to talk about the strategic plans of the Department of Transformation, which we talked about earlier on. Some of the practical questions. Obviously, we're on the verge of a revaluation. We have lots of rating policy plans prepared, mooted, not yet agreed, let alone implemented. We might want to talk about that. LPS as an organisation is probably the sole revenue collector that the Northern Ireland devolved administration has. It also, a few years ago, turned itself into a payments agency, so has a kind of proven track record of flexibility. So I'm keen to hear about loads of things happening and ask questions too. So if you'll give us an open statement, Sharon, that'll be great. And then and members obviously indicate as always.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, members, for visiting Land and Property Services today. We're delighted to have you down and being able to meet the staff and see the operations here. Just your quote about me being the boss, I'm going to clip that and bring it home and play it to my husband. Outside people are telling me this, so it just establishes my boss in the environment in my home. So, look, by way of context, our work is guided by our 5-year corporate plan, which was launched last May. I'm pleased to say, in a very challenging operating environment, we are on track for delivering all actions set out in the business plan for this year, with strong deliverables across our operational, policy and reform agenda. I will keep my opening remarks short, recognising that a detailed written briefing has already been provided. However, I would like to take this time to mention progress in a few key areas. We are, of course, at your disposal in terms of what you wish to explore. On rating policy, I know the committee is well informed on developments. Following on from considerations on the max cap and early payment discount, the reviews of small business rate review and non-domestic vacant rating are now completed. The consultation on SBBR will run until the 29th of January and would enable changes effective from April this year, subject to consideration and approvals. Further consultation on a business growth accelerator will begin early in 2026, and work is progressing to seek executive agreement on higher liability for non-domestic vacant rating in the next mandate. It is the Minister's clear intention, as he outlined in his recent statement, to review all reliefs by the end of 27-28, and my team and I continue to act at pace to deliver on this objective. Last October, Chris and I presented the rate collection strategy to you and set out our ambitions to optimise rate collection with a focus on making payments easier, supporting those who need help and taking firm enforcement action against those who refuse to pay. Year 1 actions are well advanced, and by way of illustration, Rates Online, launched this week, makes the payment process easier with instant visibility of rates accounts, options for payment arrangements and a fast and easy online messaging service to contact us. Support for those struggling to pay has been strengthened through the introduction of an online referral service to independent debt services and more targeted outreach using data available from the Department for Communities and DOSNI. In terms of those who refuse to pay, we have introduced analytics to target persistent defaulters as well as improving processes for serving enforcement papers. Building on work to date, we're in the process of identifying actions for next year's plan, working closely with key stakeholders, including the Northern Ireland Court Service, local councils, Advice NI and the Housing Executive. And in fact, site visits to understand best practice or elsewhere are planned, including a visit to a local authority in England. Further to the detailed briefing provided in October and recent responses to AQWs, we remain on track to deliver against the collections target and remain focused in our efforts. Turning to revaluation, in terms of non-domestic revaluation, I am pleased to say this process is nearing conclusion. A programme of engagement on the draft values will take place in coming months and the final position taking effect in April. A date has been scheduled to brief the committee in more detail. Over lunch, I referenced the progress we have made on the transformation journey, and you had the opportunity to see some of the service improvements in action. The NOVA programme, initiated in 2019, which focused primarily on digital change, has now formally closed, and a new citizen-focused change agenda will guide our priorities in coming years. Over the past year, several changes have been made to improve our service to customers and build the architecture needed to support future transformation. I've already referred to the Rates portal, which was launched by the Minister yesterday, offering customers self-service facilities, e-billing and improved access to their information, with over 4,000 users already registered. In Land Registry, 3.8 million Land Registry data, electronic entries have been migrated and structured, an important first step in enabling online applications. October will see the first customers applying for registration services online. The pace and scale of change is dependent on many factors, however, funding is a key consideration. We are clear on what we want to achieve, and planning has already started to develop scalable plans for future years within the indicative financial envelope. Throughout 2025, LPS continued delivering day-to-day core public services, maintaining essential income for the Executive and District Councils. We processed over 40,000 rate relief applications and completed 90% of registrable land registration applications within 25 working days. We also added over 4,900 new domestic properties to the valuation list. Work has begun on a customer-first improvement plan to streamline contact channels, improve complaint handling and embed a customer-centric culture. The Strategic Asset Management Unit, SAMU, as it's known, is now fully established. A strategic overview of land and property assets is in the final stage of drafting, and guidance to support government departments on the management of their assets will issue in March. Additionally, this year we will extend access of the Government Land and Property Register with other departments to allow more informed decision-making and joined-up planning. At the heart of our progress are our people. Their dedication and expertise make everything we achieve possible. Last year we published the LPS People Plan, which sets out actions to build a skilled, engaged and collaborative workforce. This aligns with the Next People strategy and our core vision of being people-focused. The plan focuses on staff development, engagement, leadership and resilience through strategic workforce planning. In looking ahead, I hope that today's visit allows the committee to secure a more in-depth understanding of the work of LPS and its ambitions for the future. And of course, the team and I are very happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sharon. So obviously members indicate, I'm sure there will be lots of questions given the scale of the work, the importance of the issues, the fact that we've got a multi-year budget coming up, revaluation, and also all the interesting things that we stimulated us today during our visit. I suppose first question for me, just to take it in stages, revaluation. Revaluation is done, and my understanding correctly, you are engaging at the minute in the background with stakeholders, briefing them on what to expect from the revaluation. Is that fair?
It's not done just yet,
okay.
Chair, so we're in the process of finalisation. So part of the engagement is primarily to finalise the list as well as warm people up to the implications of it.
Yes.
So it hasn't yet been finalised.
So it hasn't been finalised in the sense that you are, I presume that doesn't mean there are you haven't got to value all of the west of the Ban or value all of Lisburn and Castlereagh. Was it going through and checking final ratification, and that's the list. So double checking final proper, the status of properties. Yeah. Okay, but you're briefing then local authorities or business groups or on
quite
what
a broad
to
range. The Angela who you've met earlier has an entire engagement process with all relevant stakeholders. She will be briefing councils and others. We have some time penciled in with the committee in terms of a more in-depth briefing, and the Minister obviously will be kept apprised and will be briefed.
So you may not want to say that, and that's fine because it isn't. But are there any big new trends that have surprised you? I know Angela, the Commissioner of Valuations, isn't here, but are there any surprising new things that have emerged from the valuation process?
So obviously I can't say anything because it hasn't launched yet. Yeah. But what I would say is the last reval took place over the period of COVID.
Of course, yeah.
So there will be changes and shift changes.
And is it to say that, does that mean that in terms of commercial property, certain types of commercial property are just inherently structurally less valuable because
I give you every credit, Chair, for trying to draw me on.
You're not going to?
But no.
That's fair. Okay. Okay. Well, I move. But in terms of date, then the revalue. When are you expecting to go live and tell everybody, including rate payers and?
It hasn't just been set, but we are well advanced in our considerations on a date, and it will be in coming weeks.
And it won't be. This won't affect 26, 27 bills. Will they be affected by the new valuation?
They will.
Yes.
They will.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason for the engagement.
So are people, so without trying to tease the specifics out too much, and you're being good at kind of like resisting that, and that's fair enough, but where there are people who are getting a significant change, and it could be a significant change in either direction because of a valuation change, have they been told, now they might not have been told on the individual level, have representative groups or local councils, have they been flagged to prepare for this so that they're aware that they're not going to be, oh my gosh, look at this bill?
So that's exactly the process that is going through over coming weeks, so people understand the implications of that. But important to say that the revaluation process, of course, is about the comparative valuation rather than increasing.
I know that it's revenue neutral. It's not an exercise in getting more money.
So this process is really just to calibrate the values rather than, and it's the starting point for the rating process.
Okay, well, obviously, whenever it's public, we'd be very keen to have yourselves, including Angela.
And a date is scheduled in the diary, as I understand.
20th of January, so I shouldn't be wasting any time. A fortnight's time we'll be in talking about that. Now, one other, on the point of actual revenue raising, which we've talked to you particularly, Andrew, a lot about. There's a lot of conversation about revenue raising. When it comes to revenue, basically, when it comes to revenue raising in Northern Ireland, you guys are it. You're kind of effectively all we have, basically, and you do a pretty good job. But the multi-year budget of the in draft, it assumes a 5%, I think 3% non-domestic, 5% domestic increase. That's not agreed yet. So there are now four technically measures, but two packages of measures, two, removal of the max cap, and the early repayment. And then a non-domestic, twin of changing a vacant property and small business.
Yeah.
Were you to try? It's now too late to do both of those things, I presume, for the 26-27 financial year? No.
No, I think we probably still look to doing this.
If there was a political will to do it, it could be facilitated in both the legislation and in the operational implementation of the early payment discount and the max cap. They've both been consulted on, so it shouldn't come as...
You just need a political decision now?
Yeah, just waiting a political decision on this.
And what's the latest date?
I know that the Finance Minister in the Chamber on Monday did say that in looking at those issues, he wanted to work in collaboration with people across the multi-year budget discussions as well. So it's all in the mix.
It's in the mix. Okay.
Now on the small business rate relief one, the reason why the work's been taken forward at pace on that is deliberately to get changes in for the 1st of April 2026. And part of that ties in with the... That hasn't been a political agreement yet, so that has to have... It's that you can do it if you want. We can do it. We're out to consult at the moment. It closes on the 29th of January, and then we need to move very, very quickly to get that in for April. But all our planning is to allow us to be able to do that at the moment. Now, am I right in saying the small business rates one is revenue neutral because you're being less generous in one part to pay for more? You're being less generous on non-domestic. You're being less generous on vacant rating in order to be more generous in small business. Is that right? Basically revenue neutral? No, not necessarily. No. The vacant rating one sits at a lag, so I think the earliest we would be looking to implement the non-domestic vacant rating one would be 2027. The cross-funding that you're talking about was when the Minister presented it in terms of small business rate relief, he raised the max cap and the early payment discount in the context of that change. Okay. But likewise, the decision on the small business rate relief still remains a decision to be taken standalone. There's no hypothecated link between the two, for example. Okay, so overall, were you to do all of them for the 1st of April, would it be would it raise money or cost money? It's broadly revenue neutral in terms of the impact on the public purse, yeah. Right, okay. But if you did one where if you did non-domestic, if you had to leave the vacant rating until 27-28 financial year and do the other ones, it would cost a bit because you're the. As I said, all that is in the context of the sort of wider multi-year budget and how that all fits together in terms of the amount of money that's available. That being said, the reason why we're sticking to this time scale so rigidly in terms of right through the summer and engagement with the non-domestic stakeholders right through to the Minister's statement in November, straight out to consultation, is all for that small business rate relief change to be able to be made on 1st of April 2026, and bearing in mind that it is a revaluation year as well, so if there's support to be provided through the non-domestic rating system, it happens at that time.
Albeit it probably, given it's multi-budget, given it's broadly revenue neutral, they can agree the multi-year budget without agreeing this, because if it's not actually raising any money or costing a huge amount of money, so it doesn't really affect the overall.
This will be so it'll form part of the wider context of the multi-year budget, but it'll be a standalone paper that we put to the executive on.
Right. Okay. So it doesn't actually, because it's not that if you don't do this, then my God, you won't be able to do that on childcare. You won't be able to do that on Loch Nation. Okay. Just on a separate point, I'll bring in members now. We had a really interesting session today where we saw some of the. LPS was very good at showing us both the history of how the registry works and the history of rate collection, but also saying, I think I'm fair right in saying you'd like some of it to be history, because it's a wee bit too historical, it's a bit too paper-based, it's a little bit too slightly like a Victorian novel where you get people coming in and stamping things. But you were very open about saying this is you're on a journey and you want to. Now, do you have a number in mind that you think you could save money in terms of? Sure. First of all, do you think it would save money doing a transformation, or do you think, or is it just service improvement?
So we have a full benefits profile around this. We will absolutely save money in terms of resource. So the staff that are needed at the minute to do the work that you've seen them doing, we will be able to redeploy that staff. There will be obviously no redundancies, but we will be able to redeploy that staff. So our operating overheads will reduce as a result of this. Additionally, in terms of, you saw some of the letters, the postage, the in terms of the climate, all of that printing, there are multiple benefits associated with the change agenda. Yes. Yeah,
and you put in. You are in the middle of you put in it, you had a transformation bid in, and I presume you're going to think about if there's a transformation fund going forward, future bids in. So the Executive Transformation Fund, we have a bid in, and that's for the Earth Observation Hub in Osney. In terms of our transformation agenda, as the larger, as we know it, it will come out of the budget, the block grant. So you're acutely aware of the capital position. We are currently working through scalable plans to see what if we got, and basically, what we could live with. So there's some committed investment, and then what else would we need in order to advance in the way that we are. And our plans aren't, as we talked about earlier, they're not to make this a state-of-the-art agency. They're to step us forward in a very deliberate way to make us much more customer-focused and much more efficient. It's not just kind of... it's not the bells and whistles. Digitisation for its own sake, it's just catching up to... Okay, I'm going to bring in members now. First of all, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all very much for having us here today. I have to say, I have found it fascinating, I think, being down here and seeing the full range of staff and the different directorates, and appreciating the journey of all the different agencies that have come together and how well you work together has really put into perspective the work that you do, and your journey of transformation certainly is going to be a very exciting one. It can really be a game changer for public services here. I wanted to ask just briefly, I think as well, it's to be commended that you were nimble enough to go live early with the online rates portal, and that announcement being yesterday. And I wonder, would you have a ballpark figure of what the savings could be if, for example, through that portal, if you had 100% of people went paperless and you weren't posting the rates bills this year, or 50% of people, just to have an idea of what sort of saving that could achieve? So we're working through that detail at the minute. Diane, I think there's two things. First of all, we are absolutely encouraging and people to go completely paperless. But we're also doing some work, and Chris might say something more about that, about reducing the current rate bills. So the unfortunate incident of the URL last year was a learning opportunity for us, where we started to look at our processes and what we do there, and we scaled back the paper bill. So even if people still choose to have a paper bill, it is a much slimmer option. It's not all of the material that we have. But we haven't got the full costings, and obviously that will be in terms of the numbers that opt for online billing.
But most people that have accessed at the minute are choosing that option, so we're very hopeful. And most of us as citizens do not want a paper bill coming through. You really just want your notification. But again, on many levels, from a climate perspective, from a postage perspective, and from a customer service perspective, the e-version, the e-option is a much better approach.
Absolutely, and it's just whether there's an efficiency able to be achieved ahead of schedule. It would be really good, to capture it and quantify it and be able to report it back for you guys. I wanted to ask about something a little bit different. I don't really see it coming through in the corporate plan, but it's around your strategic role in terms of responsibility around the major infrastructure projects, vesting of properties. Which division or where does that sit within your organisation? Could you just tell me a little bit about where the accountability and the governance chains are around that?
So the role that we have that is in terms of valuation, which is Andrew's team. So we would value the property. So that would be the key role.
Okay, and then so in terms of, obviously we've had some infrastructure projects lately, and LPS were involved in and around things like like the A5. Is it the LPS that manages then the process by which property is vested, or is it the department?
No, that's the department.
Totally the department. Okay, and then whenever LPS are involved in things like that and they're conducting those valuations, is there a range of staff that would be valuing? I know obviously this is there is a case on this particular one live, but it's the most high profile example of it. But in terms of if land is agricultural use, potential commercial use, is housing, or is the full scale of that taken into account?
Absolutely.
The full potential of the cost?
The staff that we have in valuation are skilled, competent valuers who abide by all of the guidance and all of the legislative provision, and they make the assessment in terms of the value, the appropriate value for the land and property that would be vested. That's our only role in the process.
Okay. And then in terms of disputes over valuation, so obviously you're coming into this, the new revaluation process. You have your issues when you have things like vesting, and I'll not lie, I'll declare I've disputed my own valuation in the past as well. So just in terms of the process of it. So I know you lodge it, somebody talks to you about it, and sometimes it goes further. How complex can those get, and what sort of resource value would that cost be to you?
So if they get to that level, you can imagine they can be pretty complex, and we have some cases that take quite a long time to resolve. So I think I can't answer your question in a black and white way, but yes, they can be very, very complex considerations. And they matter to people, and we understand that, so we do bring a level of empathy, but ultimately there is this, as I said earlier, there's a set of rules and guidance that my officers need to abide by, so they do the best in that scenario.
And would that be at a steady rate of work, or would it be growing in recent times?
It depends, because obviously reval will bring, a new flush of appeals, queries and whatever. So it is periodic from that regard. But routinely, of course, people can question their valuation.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And again, thanks for having us today. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Brian Kingston.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And again, I've enjoyed the tour today. I think LPS is probably less visible to me and to the public generally, so it's nice to see behind the scenes the operation going on, and it's been helpful to me. I'm sure all members. I want to start with an obvious question. I think I know the answer to this, but just for confirmation, the amount that is brought in through LPS to the public purse, is it around 1.5 billion?
1.6, just over 1.6 last year, billion.
And all of that money is retained for public purse then in Northern Ireland, is that correct?
It's between the councils and
yes, between stormont departments and local government. So it is all additional to the block grant from Treasury.
Absolutely.
That's none of it goes across the water then?
No.
Yeah. In terms of the online application scheme that you're working towards for land registry in particular, has any assessment of savings to the public purse been made of that, and are you receiving support from the Transformation Fund? for that?
So I think I mentioned this earlier. In terms of our savings right across the piece, we have a full benefits realisation piece on this, documenting what we expect to achieve by way of savings, both financially, in terms of the value to the customer, in terms of efficiency savings, in terms of climate change. So there are quite a range of benefits around that, which we will track. The key considerations in terms of savings is headcount. So it is a highly administrative function at the minute. And if you recall just the amount of processes that it took just to get to the point of having an application ready to consider. So that's the key savings that we have. We will be tracking over a period of time, yes.
And have you applied? Are you getting support from the Transformation Fund?
We haven't applied to the Transformation Fund because we've already committed on that. We have applied to the Transformation Fund for another initiative, as I described earlier, and we're hopeful, but we haven't heard any response on that just yet.
Okay. A couple of specific things. I recently dealt with a case of someone his mother had moved into a nursing home and he was retaining the property just for now. In terms of generally situation where people are asset rich, cash poor, I had promoted to him a rates deferment scheme, which I remember came in during Nigel Dodds' time as finance minister. But when I inquired about it, I think that has ended. And obviously this was to benefit people who, as I say, asset rich, cash poor, maybe owned or had inherited a large house but had difficulty paying the rates bill, and the idea was to defer the rates payment to a later point, quite often to death. So when the asset is disposed, that rates bill could be settled. Why was that ended? Was it deemed to be problematic, or was there abuse of it, or is there any equivalent scheme for people who are asset rich and cash poor?
So that was before my time, but my colleague here is itching to talk about policy.
The rates deferment scheme was brought in by Nigel Dodds as minister. It was in for a short period of time, but then when Sammy Wilson was minister, he removed it, and the reason was the amount of legal costs that were basically being incurred by people that were wanting to avail of it, because effectively the way that the rates deferment scheme operated was it placed an order charging land on the property. So between that, the cost, and as a result of the cost, the very, very low uptake of it, he decided that it was to be removed. So it came shortly thereafter. In relation to the asset rich income poor, particularly for people that are in the pensioner bracket, the capital savings limit under the low income rate relief scheme, at the point at which the capital value system was brought in, was put up to £50,000. So it was in recognition of that fact that there may be people that have, capital savings that have, and aside from that, if there's issues with payment, then I know that Chris has procedures in place to allow those payments to be sort of managed in a sympathetic way for people that come to us early.
And I would also just add that we still have, although the scheme itself is closed, the rate deferment scheme, there are still some ratepayers that have that, and there are handfuls every now and then that the property then is sold or it's disposed of. We then have to go through a calculation of interest and then that money back. So that's part of our overall collection. So there will always be elements that we can't collect in a year because of schemes like that. So there are, and it is small numbers now at this stage. I think it's less than 50.
But there are schemes available for people who have an asset that will be disposed at some stage.
Well, no, there's not. The rates are payable in full on every.
They might
property.
have to just arrange their own loan or whatever.
Well, what we can do is we can arrange set up a payment arrangement. Now, if somebody is in the circumstances you had, somebody's moved into a care home, there are rate reliefs under
rate of empty homes.
Yeah, rate of empty homes for individuals like that. But it depends on the circumstances, and the property also has to be unoccupied and not used for storage, which causes a bit of a wrench for families because they don't necessarily want to make the property, take the property. There's always a hope that somebody's going to come back to it. Yeah. So there are challenges around that, but there are schemes available in that regard.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, I'm aware that there are certain circumstances where people can get exemption or 100% rates relief, but I'm also concerned how that could potentially contribute to unoccupied properties, to blight, which is a particular annoyance to me, when you see long-term derelict properties. Yeah. So how do you balance that?
I think that's...
Is rate relief meant to be short-term rather than long-term? Or if you get a long-term derelict property, or do people get the situation where they never have to pay rates and they're almost incentivised? Well, whereas if they were paying rates, put it this way, they would have an incentive to bring the property back into use.
I think, Brian, if you're happy, I'll take this question. This is the broader picture of what our Minister's looking at today at this period, which is reviewing all of the rate reliefs to make sure they're relevant, to make sure they're appropriate, and to keep them under constant review. Mm-hmm. And some reliefs will come on and off as broader circumstances dictate, but that's the process that we're in at the minute.
Yeah. One last question, Chair, if I can. In terms of land registry and access to it as an elected, both as a councillor and now as an MLA, from time to time I've been trying to answer questions about alleyways that nobody seems to know who owns them, or there's disputes between statutory agencies, and again long-term derelict properties. Can information be provided to elected representatives to help them in their role, or do we just have to, like a member of the public, go through the public portal and pay a fee?
Yes. It's the short answer.
Yes to which?
Yes.
Now you're honest.
Pay the fee.
Right.
You heard earlier that, our staff there are paid through full cost recovery. So, this is part of what we want to change moving forward, that actually you have access online. It is easier for all of us to access this information. But, yes, those are the arrangements at the minute.
Right. Okay. Just from the front of you, public service, trying to help resolve issues, it would be helpful if but anyway, that's fine. I'll maybe have the conversation offline. Thank you, Chair.
Solicitors obviously pay a fee.
Yes.
And that would be, okay.
Any member of the public, I think, pays a fee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I suppose we would probably be taking, MLAs might have taken work off local solicitors if we, anyway, but there's a separate question. You're finished, Brian?
Yes.
Hi, Harvey.
But to your point, Brian, we're very keen to hear what's useful and helpful moving forward in shaping our transformation agenda, which is why we've changed it to the citizen perspective on it. So, we're very happy to have a further conversation.
I'm sure we'll have casework perspectives that we can share with you.
Yes, indeed.
Harry, for next.
Owen, did you need to leave? Would you like to come
no, work away, Harry. I'm
sure?
You're fine, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you for your lovely visit and for your lunch. It was very nice, and thank you for all your help along the way with visits to the office. And you are always, I was told by the office stuff makes you say right.
Keep it good. Dylan would make you away.
No, you're right.
Soften up, Harry.
Yeah. What is it you're looking?
Okay. Now you're offering. Capacity and skills. Does LPS currently have sufficient qualified valuers and negotiators to meet projected infrastructure demand over the next 5 years?
So it's a great question, and we struggled with that. We struggle, as most organisations do, to attract, retain skilled, qualified people. And you heard me talk about the people plan and our investment in our people, and that's one of the things that we're looking at, the scarcity of skills. Interestingly, in terms of turnover, 50% of our staff leave on promotion and a third of staff leave in retirement. So we do have an age issue, as the broader civil service does as well. And that's one of the things my team and I are really trying to hone in on. How do we succession plan, and how do we make sure that we're sustainable from the people perspective, never mind our infrastructure and our IT.
Yeah, no, that's good, thank you. And how reliant is LPS on agency staff or external consultants, and does this impact consistency or speed?
So in terms of agency staff, we are absolutely relying, and we have just over 100, I've got the figure here, but it's over 100, but that's not the right figure, agency staff that some of them have been with us for a while, and actually they're doing a really important job, and in the absence of a market where we can attract and sustain people for the longer term, because as you know, the broader economic or labour environment is different now. People aren't necessarily joining jobs for life. So the agency staff, whilst views it temporary, they're a really important an asset for us within Land and Property Service. So I don't see that as a weakness. I see it as an absolute strength that we have those people, that they're with us and they're delivering the job that we need them to do.
Okay. In the latest figure, there's 137 agency staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And would you say, is there a skills gap in dealing with complex agricultural development and mixed-use land valuations?
I don't think we have a particular skills gap in any of those I alluded to earlier. We have a competent, skilled, professional staff in Land and Property Service. What there is a pressure in is capacity sometimes rather than capability. But I'm absolutely confident of the strength and the capability of the staff in Land and Property Services.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for your sensible approach and all.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Steve Aiken is next.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. Thanks very much indeed, Tim. I've got a variety of questions, and they're a bit sort of higgledy-piggledy.
Okay.
Please. First one, we've been through this before, but just in case the budget happens to be delayed slightly, what's the timelines you need to get the rates bills out?
In terms of we need the regional rates order approved.
Yeah.
So timeline is, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, typically we'll have that debate middle of March at the latest, because Chris shuts the system off, and then we're into difficulties after that. But we have had a range of challenges over the years.
I know we've been there before. Yeah.
We're talking to Mr. Aiken just before the session started, around the time whenever the executive collapsed in 2017, I think, and there was issues with getting through, and Westminster had to step in at that stage and legislate for the regional rates during those points. But we're nowhere near that space at the moment.
Okay, so we're fairly confident we're going to get it out on.
Yeah, I think that we have contingency processes in place already for that. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Next one. I'm very impressed on the sort of the building and the data of all the buildings that we have and all the buildings we actually own. And you've got, how much energy costs are and this, that, and the rest of it. Have we got anywhere the amount of usage we're actually making in the buildings? Because, you look at the building here and there's floors are empty. And obviously with people working from home and sort of the rest of it, do we actually know the usage of these buildings?
Yeah, you heard Suzanne earlier talk about the attributes. So that's one of the things that we can start to build in and start to really understand the usage of buildings and how we optimise that use.
Yeah. It's just very conscious is that we have a lot of the estate that's sitting there, sits most of the week empty. Yeah. And we're paying a fortune on sort of heating it and light and everything else that goes into it as well.
Certainly hybrid working, working from home and a hybrid working has brought a new dynamic for us. And now, particularly with civil service, we have a return to work. And we're still bedding that in terms of understanding how that impacts on our overall estate.
Okay, thanks for that. Nothing uncontroversial. Fujitsu. There are huge concerns amongst MLAs and huge concerns about MPs, MSPs and AMs, full stop, about Fujitsu and how they've actually been treating government contracts as well. I was quite concerned when you were talking about you were doing workarounds to try and get systems to work, that you were running them as your own sort of things. Actually getting Fujitsu to embed those into the system will cost an awful lot of money. Mm-hmm. And unless we control the IP of it, we'll end up getting charged for our own work dramatically. Mm-hmm. What methods do we have of safeguards over the Fujitsu contracts that we don't end up sort of it being sort of collapsing like other IT contracts have had, and how we're not getting seen off about them?
So it's a good question. I mean, the first point in terms of the innovations that I was describing wasn't in the land registry space. They were in the OSNI space, which is talking about our data capacity, some of the things that we've just talked about in terms of geospatial information and how we use that moving forward. In terms of land registry, we are in a very clear contract with very detailed plans about what we expect and when we expect it. We have a full governance infrastructure around that, and I meet regularly with the senior team in Fujitsu to make sure that we are absolutely in the same space on that. So we are not running a a dual platform of innovation on the land registry stuff, because primarily what we're talking about is a new system to deliver something that we cannot deliver at the minute. And you've seen the administrative process that's needed. We can't do that. We can't make those changes ourselves. The contract that we have with Fujitsu is something outside of our skill and capacity band, and we will be working with them on delivering the best option for us here.
Is it a fixed price contract?
We have all of it built in terms of deliverables, in terms of payments, milestones. All of that's tracked, and all of it's on track at the minute.
Okay, thanks very much, Reid. I need to make a declaration of interest because I'm chair of the all-party group in aerospace and defence. But it was interesting you were talking about the use of satellite data and how that's doing. There are several programmes that are being run as innovations through the Government Innovation Programme to be infusing data. One of the most interesting one is also fusing the data with Google Earth and being able to fuse Google Earth with it so you can actually look head on the screen. You've got the Ordnance Survey data, but you can actually see the building, basically, and the road and the rest of it. That is something that's already going on across the rest of government. Are we reaching out across to see best practice across the rest of the UK on this?
So if you were in a room with Suzanne for half an hour, she could explain this much better than I ever could. But the short answer is yes. Suzanne is at the cutting edge of all that's happening. She maintains very close relationships and actually has spoken all over the world in terms of some of the work that we're doing. So we look elsewhere to see what they're doing, but actually there's some really good work that we have showcased, developed and implemented. She talked earlier about some projects that we haven't rolled out yet, but she is constantly in test mode to understand the art of the possible and how we use our data and our geospatial information layered around other information to get us into a space where we can really plan in a very informed way.
I was very struck by you must be keeping the post office in business and you must be keeping banks in business by the postage charges and particularly banking charges for cheques for whatever reason and the rest of it. Have you any idea of the outline of sort of those likely costs are, so we could have an indicative degree of savings that if we go fully digitised we get rid of that?
So as I said earlier, we're mapping that at the minute in terms of our costs and savings. We have no option at the minute, as you know, but to go down that route. But the savings will be quite substantive. I don't have the detail with me today, but we have done all of that work from a planning perspective, and we will be monitoring that very, very carefully. But yes, there will be gains to be had.
Okay, thanks, Dave, very much.
Thank you.
That's it, Chair.
Okay, Gemma.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for having us in today. I found it absolutely fascinating. So if there's any jobs going in LPS after the next election,
Now that you say.
Obviously, I represent Fermanagh and South Tyrone rural constituency, a whole load of land ownership queries. And you've kind of covered this with Brian, so I'm just clarifying. With your transformation project, are you saying that to be able to search the land registry, constituents of mine will be able to do that online if they pay a fee, and then they can just search online in Fermanagh? That's the end goal?
That's the end goal.
That's the end goal.
And provide as much information as we can to citizens through the online.
And I know you said it's going to take finance. Have you any idea how much it would cost and how long it would take?
So with the project that we just talked about in Fujitsu, we have planned that in October 2027, there'll be full access online in terms of registering land and access. Now, the detail in terms of what you've just described, I'm more than happy to write to you to set that out in detail. But certainly by October 2027, registration and those services will all be online.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. That's good news. That's all I had to ask, so thank you, Chair.
Deirdre Hargey.
Yeah, no, again, just to echo what everybody said, thanks for the visit. It's only when you come and actually see the breadth of work that you are involved in, and it actually is exciting work. So I found the digitalising, I suppose, the public land has been very good, and as I said earlier, I would look forward to that expanding to local government and stuff, because I think there's massive opportunity, as I say, around local development plans and other things. I wanted to ask a bit on the transformation, because I know we've looked at it in detail. I mean, I think we would all agree that we need to modernise, we need to put things online, we need to speed up the process, because you can see how mundane it is when you're just visiting here. And obviously that's down to the system that you are working to. I know you've said one of the big risk factors, or I suppose issues, is funding, but I was going to ask, are there other key risk factors aside from the funding that we would need to be aware of?
From a programme point of view, obviously I'm managing risk across the piece, and you don't enter into any transformation without risk. And I think I alluded to earlier, no matter how the best plans, things can go awry. But I think the important thing is we have all been through major transformations. I have lots of experience in this, and we're keeping an eye in terms of where the weak spots might be. There is nothing on our radar at the minute that's causing any problems, but it is challenging to deliver the level of operational performance that we have at the minute, and also to run a significant transformation programme. And my biggest concern, not a risk, my biggest concern at the minute is keeping staff sustained, and with us over the period of this transformation programme, because that's a big ask. So that would probably be the one that would be foremost in my mind, to be honest.
And I was going to ask, because obviously there are two of your key areas, is people and transformation, and you can't do one without the other either. But I suppose in that sphere then of obviously emerging AI and new technologies and stuff, I suppose that can present opportunities, but again there's also challenges, and even the whole area of automation. If you are doing more of the digital, then is there a need for the staff and members? So it's just to see what worker scoping has been done around that, and I suppose just even the area of identity theft, so whether that's around land registry and critical, because this is sensitive information obviously that you have. So are there opportunities or threats around that as part of the transformation work?
So all of that is an absolute non-negotiable, that we will protect data, protect information. So that's locked in. In terms of your question on savings, I think I covered it earlier in terms of we will be displacing staff from the work that they currently do, but redeploying elsewhere to other work.
Okay. And I had a question on, just because I met an agency worker that I know on the way in earlier, and obviously he was saying he's potentially contracted until September. So is most of the agency staff, is that on the transformation work, or is it throughout other areas of business within? It'll
be mostly in not exclusively, but mostly in Chris's area, in rates collection.
Yeah, I would have a large agency base administering rate rebate. And the reason we have that at the moment, particularly for rate rebate, is to flex up. We're going through a period of migration from legacy benefits to universal credit. And while we are under pressure with the number of applications that are coming through, once that steadies out, we should go back to a more normal business processing. And the agency staff are vital to help us manage that through to that steady state.
Aye, so the spike in it is down to that move, do you see then, is it? Or
it's primarily around that, and also then on the rate collection side, we're also using our agency staff to backfill on our experienced staff who are working on projects. Because we've got obviously the project that's is time bound and pressured for us. So to ensure that we can deliver that and deliver business as usual, our agency staff help us in that regard.
Okay, no worries. No, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
You okay? Happy there? Right, Brian wanted to come in quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to ask one extra question. Is non-domestic rates income holding up, or has it declined since COVID and growth in home working and things like that?
Do you mean collections?
Yeah, the actual income, from non-domestic rates, business, rates. Is there a trend in that? Is it holding up? I'm aware just there's a growth in people working at home, businesses maybe not requiring as large premises, and people also maybe operating businesses from home. Businesses which have property, obviously are paying that and are at a disadvantage to those that don't declare their proproperties or reduce their properties.
So is your question in terms of the tax base?
I'm just. Are you aware of what the trend is? Yes, is the income to the public purse from non-domestic rates?
So there's no discernible change, as I understand it, and it hasn't impacted in terms of our collections. These colleagues, it is.
You haven't been aware of any change,
absolutely,
over recent years, and it's a way we can if we grow our economy, we can we can grow our income from public services.
It may have changed slightly. You might have different, maybe slightly less retailers, slightly less offices, maybe more factories. But it's not in material terms in terms of the tax base.
But overall, you haven't noticed any discernible change. Okay, well that's good. Okay.
We'll wait to see the valuation to see if the valuation. But you're not going to tell us that.
No, I thought Brian was asking your question in a different way.
We work together as a committee. We work together as a committee.
It would be a concern because
of course.
And part of your job is also to find, quite frankly, where businesses are operating. And I do feel like for retailers who have shops in the high street, it's clear for everyone to see, and if they're competing against people who are operating a retail operation, hidden from public view.
There's a big factor in the strategic review of small business relief and the issue of whether it should be targeted or whether there should be sector neutral support interventions. And part of the finding was that the sector neutral approach would allow new businesses to come in and maybe fill that gap that was left for, if the retail sector's compressing slightly. So it's part of the discussions that we had with businesses as part of that.
But do you have people who actively, or does councils take the lead in that in terms of trying to determine where
new business,
where an online business and business is taking place, so that properties are being rated at the appropriate level?
Oh yeah, it would be indicators. They're not too long in telling it because certainly if they move into a property, if the landlord's paying the non-domestic vacant rates, they want to be able to. They're very quick to tell you there's an occupier in that property because they want the liability off them and onto the occupier to rent.
So it's the repair change process that we would go through. So as one repair leaves a property and another enters a property, we gather that information and we then bill appropriately according to that. But in terms of noticing any change in use of the property, so properties that are previously occupied and people working within them who are now working from home, we have nothing in our data that shows any indication of that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
You're happy now? We touched on this a little bit earlier on, Sharon, in discussion before we were in full committee session about, if LPS was able to employ more people, does LPS have a view on whether it was able to devote more resource to collection, it would be able to generate more revenue for the executive? Meaning you would have more people who would be able to, for example, hopefully deal with and process people who definitively cannot repay. So you want more people who can do that work more quickly and get those people dealt with, and they have a legitimate reason why they cannot pay. The circumstances so fundamentally changed that that money's not going to be recovered. But also deal with the people who can pay and are vexatiously avoiding it and being. Do you think if you had more staff that would pay for itself and then a bit in terms of additional collection?
I think the short answer is you always need more resource, and if we did have more resource, it would be put to very good effect in terms of rates collection, both in terms of encouraging rates to be paid and in encouraging those people who aren't paying rates to pay as well. So yes, we would make very good use of that resource, and it would pay for itself. Okay,
and then I suppose final question is, the bits of. I keep thinking of them as two twins, one on domestic, as things that have been consulted on, or one is still being consulted on, the other was consulted on some time ago, and then there's a whole load of other consultations that were done when there was no executive at the behest of the MIO. But of the two that were consulted on as specific measures, one has been consulted on, a paper's gone to the executive, it has never been, as far as I'm aware, discussed in earnest by the executive, and there's no decision. The other, the Finance Minister has made clear his preference. A consultation is about to finish, and then he, I presume, we don't know, will put a paper to the executive saying the position is for LPS could make those changes in time for financial year 26-27, but you basically need a political decision. There needs to be an exec.
That's for small business rate relief.
That's for small business relief, yeah. But you could also do that, presumably. Do you think you could do the domestic one? Could you do the domestic one on time for 26? If the executive met tomorrow, agreed, actually we'll go ahead and change the max max cap thing?
And EPD.
And the early repayment. Could you do that for April 26?
We could. We could, yes, technically.
Yes.
And clearly we'd need to look at the lead-in times in terms of customers, and that would be the consideration in terms of.
And
small business rate relief is slightly different because it's negative resolution, so it doesn't require executive agreement. So we can, if there's political agreement on it, we can go right down to the wire in terms of the legislation on that. So, but again, billing systems shut off at a certain point in time, so decisions need to be taken before that.
In terms of, so obviously these are things for 26, 27, and we know what the Finance Minister has indicated he wants to do on the overall rate, or the regional rate anyway, for in terms of the 3% and the 5% in domestic and non-domestic. And I know there's the strategic cycle and the long-term review of all the different reliefs and all of that. Has any work gone on in terms of saying, well, actually, we would like to use the rate system, not aside from the actual overall rate, we would like to look at adjusting reliefs to the extent of releasing us a bit more revenue in 28, 29.
By adjusting reliefs, do you mean removal?
Remove anything, like removing them, making them less generous.
So in all of the considerations, that's part of the options. I mean, the review of reliefs will not just look at whether they're appropriate, but the rates and all of those considerations. So there is potential for withdrawal if you find through a consultation and through the evidence that you have that it's actually not doing what it's supposed to. And we talked about one earlier that was stopped in that regard. So, There
was another thing which I've now forgot. There were so many different reviews that were happening, particularly when we returned. One of them was this, I believe, the strategic income review.
That's outside of...
That's outside. That was all the income that was coming into the executive. And I think it included things like OSNI fees. So OSNI obviously charges developers and...
I think it's more closely being taken for by Jeff McGuinness' side. Could be wrong about that, but I think it's Jeff McGuinness' side and Joanne's team.
But you haven't recently been asked to do any more. I suppose that the reason I asked this question is not to be mischievous, but because this is without... Leave aside, obviously, parking tickets and other sorts of ancillary income that accrue in AFB fees and animal testing. All of that is like trivial. It's rounding errors and important, but it's not meaningful in fiscal terms. The only thing that's meaningful in fiscal terms locally is what LPS does. So kind of unique and uniquely placed in terms of there's no big new thing you've been asked to do for the multi-year budget to go away and think about.
I mean, what the levers we have is pretty well documented.
Yeah, and I think it is important to say that primarily we take the decisions in terms of the rates levels and we collect the rates. Yeah. So in terms of the policy considerations, that's the process we're in at the minute. But in terms of the budget setting arrangements on rates, that's outside of our control.
You can tell what's possible, not what's politically advisable. Okay. I've asked that question in about 12 different ways, so I wouldn't ask it in 13. Trying to get that. Anyway, right. Thank you very much. Yes, we will just on the roadmap. I won't be mischievous and ask about the destination of the roadmap, or indeed how long the map. We've looked at maps.
The roadmap. The road is shorter.
The road is shorter. Okay, yes, I know it's changed from 10 years to 2 years. And having looked at a really cool map upstairs, I'm now much more encouraged by the roadmap because I know you guys can do maps here. So when do we know when the map is going to that map, not the upstairs map, when that map is going to be with us?
So the Minister will will consider the next reviews, and once the Minister has done that, then we will be ready to take action in terms of what needs to be done to bring another set of proposals.
Okay. Well, look, I would have to say there may not be political decisions or even political discussions, but at least LPS is providing options. I don't think you can be faulted for that, and you've been upfront with us about how you've come to those figures. No one else has indicated they wish to ask a question. Thank you very much. I think it was really, really useful briefing. We'll obviously have you again in front of us in a couple of weeks to talk about the reval, and I'm sure there'll be other conversations about the rating order and then other questions about rating policy and revenue policy more generally. But that was really useful. And again, thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure. Chair, just on behalf of the staff of Land and Property Services, really welcome you coming here
great,
today.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad and hope we didn't I hope...
No, they enjoyed it.
I hope nobody... I hope there aren't any... any accidental 10 million rate bills.
Good to see you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to do a very quick comfort break. We don't have that much left on our agenda. We have a couple of LCMs and now page 340 of the meeting pack. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Page 340 of the meeting pack, members' order, is the first of all, we will get agreement. I assume everyone's agreed that Hansard will provide a transcript of the next two agenda items which relate to legislative consent motions. Members, at page 340 of the meeting pack, the Department has laid a legislative consent memorandum for the Cyber Security and Resilience Network Information Systems Bill, Understanding Order 42A 4B. The committee will wish to note that the Minister is not bringing a legislative consent memorandum, 42A 4B, indicating that there is still work to be done with DCIT colleagues. However, he intends to bring forward an LCM and draft motion in due course. So, members, that is to note this. But I'm still slightly unclear, having read this, as to why the delay, or why the lack of certainty.
Chair.
Is there a Windsor Framework Protocol? I'll bring in other members now. Deputy Chair Steve Aiken.
Chair, no, there's still issues that they are talking to DCIT about. There's still things that haven't been fully pinned down, and I think there are still some outstanding legal issues. You recall when officials came and briefed, there was some talk of trying to kind of clarify where everybody's legal advice took, but I think that's still happening. They are charged with updating us as soon as they get further word. We're still okay on time scale for that one. And the Minister is minded, as he's indicated, to bring forward the full legislative consent memorandum. But I think it's just those clarifications with DCIT.
You'll go to Deputy Chair first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My understanding of this was that the Windsor Framework was preventing Northern Ireland aligning with the rest of GB on it, and I just wondered, can we get clarity? Are we waiting on an analysis up and under the Windsor Framework, or is it with the committee? Or?
Chair, that was the legal issue, because obviously legal officials here, and DSO, perhaps have more awareness than the officials in DCIT.
Okay.
So I think it was, as I say, making sure that everybody had access to the appropriate advice before everything could be pinned down. So that's still ongoing. Okay.
Steve Aiken.
Make a declaration of interest here, because I sit in the world's most infurious committee, in the Windsor Framework Committee. The issues are NIS2, the EU Cyber Security Directive, EU 2022-255, EU 2016 G79, which is GDPR, and the EU Digital Omnibus Package that has been raised on the 19th of November 2025. Every single one of those things should be reflected in this, and it's not. So there's a considerable amount of work that needs to be done to this. So feel free to send off to the Finance Committee those directives, but that has to be done in relationship with those directives. And each one of those has an impact on this.
Okay. Well, we await to hear more, and certainly, yes, and we will get more, hopefully, as soon as possible. So, now, members, the next agenda item is also an LCM, and it's the Public Office Accountability Bill. Obviously, Hansard has agreed to provide a transcript on this too. That's at page 347 of the meeting pack. The Department has laid a legislative consent memorandum, Understanding Order 42A, with a draft motion seeking the Assembly's consent for the Public Office Accountability Bill, excluding Part 4, to legislate on behalf of the Executive / Department in what are devolved areas. On the 5th of November, officials provided an oral briefing on the relevant content of the bill. At that time, members had asked officials for detailed responses to departmental engagement and the level of risk for the LCM. Members were also concerned about the slippage in process which would allow the NI Assembly time to provide consent or otherwise. At page 353 of the meeting pack, members will wish to consider whether a reply from the Department which indicates that, quote, the Executive agreed to support a legislative consent memorandum at its meeting on the 17th of November, noting the positive responses to departmental engagement on the risk, which is consider that response, we wish to consider that reply. There is no further detail on the actual responses to the departmental engagement or assessed level of risk for the LCM to proceed. The LCM was laid in the business office during Christmas recess. However, now the recess has ended, the committee now has 15 working days under Standing Order 42A7 to report on the relevant provisions of the bill, should it choose to do so. This would mean the committee agreeing a report at its meeting next week. The Department indicates that a number of amendments to the bill will be made by the UK government to deal with the extension to devolved jurisdictions. DCIT colleagues expect, DCIT, that's the UK department, DCIT expect to reach report stage in the Commons soon. I don't say what soon is. I don't know what stage that is. Do you think that's this month?
I think that will be within weeks. Committee report stage is pending, which will then lead to third reading. It hasn't gone into the House of Lords yet, but we are aware from colleagues that they had anticipated that we would be getting a report this week. That hasn't happened. So it is imminent. It may well be next week, and then they follow with third reading really quickly after that. So because the LCM has been laid, the legislative consent motion under 4A has been laid, our 15 days window starts to tick the minute we came back from Christmas recess. So as you've indicated, Chair, that closes on the 23rd, so the committee needs to be in a position where it has reported. I should also flag up, even though there were still discussions going on with DCIT around the potential further amendments, the committee is considering the bill as drafted. That's the committee's role with the legislative consent motion, because if timings and standing orders were followed exactly, we would have no opportunity to do anything else. Therefore, a committee would report on the bill as drafted. We have seen that, and as I say, the committee has seen that, and now we have the 15-day window for a committee report. There's briefing has happened already from the department. Members have dealt with issues. That will all be reflected in the committee report, which the plan for that time scale would be bringing that report, the next week's committee, going out in this Friday's pack for members to reflect on and then see if you're comfortable making a decision. Irrespective of that, the department will be able to bring forward the draft motions in the LCM. They can bring forward the motion, and then the House will decide. Ultimately, as with any LCM, the House will make a decision. That's how the process works. The committee's role is to make the report to potentially inform the House as to where they may wish to go. This one has been slightly better advertised than the cybersecurity one, purely because there's been a very lengthy passage of discussion about what's the public public office accountability bill has been flagged up as various things, Hillsborough bill and various other things. There's been a very long period of discussion about it. Mm-hmm. It also moves on from legislation in GB, primarily for England, around duty of candour in health, which we didn't have, and that's why the health ministers talked about separate subsequent legislation. So all of those issues needed to be worked out with the health department before the executive was willing to go ahead with this, in terms of what this actually did, what was still missing that England will have, but we won't have here. So I think that has largely been established, hence the sort of responses from the executive and the feedback in terms of any risk that still exists. So it will cover a certain amount of public office. However, in the realm of health, there will still have to be further legislation, because Northern Ireland has not kept up with what has happened in England particularly.
So we'll bring the Deputy Chair. Just from understanding, so the bill, is it that the original UK bill excludes health, or is it that...
No, the original UK bill has health in it.
This is a subsequent one, so it's adding to that, because ultimately, as I've said, with things that have happened in various discussions, the health one obviously didn't cover anything beyond health. So this is mirroring what was in the original health one for the rest of the public office.
So, but the current UK bill does not include health, because it's
already been done.
Because it's already done. Okay, yeah. So, but
not here.
Not here, indeed. But that's from just because the legislative consent memorandum, or what is in the memorandum and what will be in the LCM itself, is effectively everything in the bill apart from Part 4, which is to do with legal aid.
Yeah, which is a devolved issue that they won't touch.
Okay, I'll bring in members, Deputy Chair, and then Steve Aiken.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on it, and I know it's for next week, I wonder could we get a summarised form of quick clarity on this, but just to be completely clear, because I'm still a little bit confused as to the exclusion of Part 4 on it, and it doesn't just deal with legal aid, but it's also some duties around public authorities having regard to some guidance around candour, and I know it's saying that separate legislation will come forward, but I just would wonder how the duties that were in the Part 4 would be planned to be replicated in Northern Ireland. Have we any idea of that and just a little bit more detail of that, because it is the one bit that's been dropped, and just to say it's because of devolved matters without a little bit more detail of what that's going to look like for us, I would like to get a brief form of sharp clarity.
Could we ask the department, possibly the Department of Justice, or the Committee for Justice? I don't know if we have to go to the committee or we're going to go straight to the Department of Justice to ask, and ask if they have any plans to mirror, because it is a relatively large anomaly if the only thing that doesn't apply is the ability of people.
In terms of time scale, Chair, that would we probably wouldn't get a reply before the committee needs to make a decision.
Well, but that brings me on to my next point, which is...
But I can raise the issue.
Yes,
but
so I can give my view as chair now, which is I don't feel we have the time to give to compose, write, agree a deed. I have to say my party has been in support of this bill in principle, including at Westminster, and so that is not. Do not infer from me saying I don't think this committee has the time, or that it has the. I don't think we have the capacity to produce a detailed report. But I'm not totally sure we have to produce a detailed report on this. That's not to say that we can't flush out important issues and raise them on the floor of the Assembly in asking the Finance Minister further questions as he proposes this LCM. That is my current view, but it's open for discussion with the committee. But I'll bring in Steve Aiken and then Deirdre.
Sorry. Yeah, the health one's an important one, but it's also the justice issue where it comes down to the duty of candour. And that's also how the duty of candour is explained. And I'm quite surprised that the Justice Ministry hasn't raised any issues about it.
So, saying sorry.
No, sorry. Obviously, we've discussed the health ones because that's a separate piece of legislation. But there was also an issue to do with things with inquests. There's a whole raft of stuff, but there's also an issue with public office. Is the police covered by public office? How does that refer? What are the implications for that? The rest of it. I think just to follow up from what the Deputy Chair has sort of raised, just an explanation of what's specifically excluded within the Northern Ireland Constitution. They should be able to put their hands directly on that, because that should have been in the briefing note that went to the Executive. Yeah. So they should be able to just grab that out and sort of tell us what it is.
Well, they may well be important questions. I think they are that we can raise in this context, and then we can. Either we will get them back to the committee, and then we can make them known to the Assembly more widely through various means. Or we can, indeed flag them, and the Minister can answer them in the chamber.
We'll also, because of the time scale, we will flag in the report, because we will bring a draft next week. We will flag all the issues raised today in the report. I think probably it would be, I should have said, is the committee doesn't have to agree. The committee, and it's commonly done, can reserve its position on this if it feels there's still too much going on in the time scale that the committee's had to consider. The committee is quite within its rights to set out the questions in its report. These are things that we have raised that would like to get greater clarification on, and reserve its position. So it's not a we agree or we don't. The committee agrees or doesn't agree. It can.
Chair Peter, for a mode of clarification, we're the only committee this has come to, hasn't it?
Yes.
So it hasn't gone to Justice and it hasn't gone to Health.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Deirdre.
I know, it was just for a bit of clarity. I would like us to know, obviously, when the briefing happened, this didn't come out, but the Manchester Arena families had raised the issue around MI5 being included. I know it's in the reserved space, but obviously it has an impact because they would have a presence here. So it would just be through any deliberations. And since that call's been made by those families that they're included, is there any update on that area of work?
On the NCA as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so can I just ask people's view then on whether they feel that we have strong feelings that we should endeavour to expedite an agreed committee report or position on the bill. I can say that politically, I think many parties will be supportive of this bill, but that isn't quite the same thing as us as a committee being able to provide a more technical piece of, as it were, like legislative advice to the Assembly. I'm not sure that's doable at this timetable, but I'm open to hear other views.
I mean, to the Chair, I think the idea is that there's enough questions here that have been raised for us not to come to an opinion. But when you're making your remarks from the floor, you can explain the reasons why.
Yes, I mean, I don't think anyone can infer from this a kind of either, not just opposition, but certainly not opposition on my part. I support the bill, but like scepticism about our ability to get all the information that we need to provide a response to the full assembly. It's, I think, more a logistical question than a policy one.
I think, Chair, you're perfectly right.
Are people happy enough with that? Happy enough that what I will suggest is that we will get as much information as we can and just say the committee did not arrive at a final position purely because we didn't have the time to.
Chair, it's perhaps also useful to suggest that all these questions will be asked, and whenever that information becomes available, the committee can publish it as an addendum to the report, so that there is as much information for members to decide in the House when the motion on this is brought forward. We're still not entirely clear on the time scale. It's just very unfortunate that the 15 days in standing orders puts an immense amount of pressure on a committee. That has long been debated, and it is an issue that the Procedures Committee will be considering. But it doesn't. The agreement of a report and to reserve a position doesn't stop the committee from continuing to publish any information it gets right up until the point where the motion is debated. If members, are agreed.
Where is it in Parliament at the moment?
It's committee is about to report, and then it'll go to third reading, but it hasn't been through the Lords yet.
Okay.
So I think there's probably more time.
Yeah, we only 10 days.
But it's one of those things. Standing orders has already given us more time, because the first part of standing orders, the Minister would have been putting down a memorandum within the bill being introduced. That didn't happen, nor does it happen. And that gives us a little bit more time in terms of briefing and so on. But once the legislative consent memorandum under 4A comes, kicks off our 15 working days. Now, that, as I say, is very much a debatable time scale. It's a little bit, Chair, like the 30 working days for a bill, unless you seek an extension. But unfortunately, this doesn't have an open, it's not open to extension. However, as I say, the committee can continue to publish information that it gets as an addendum to the report right up until the motion.
Well, that's fine, and then we can reflect comments that we make and discussions that we have, even if we don't have a formal report, because we haven't met. Are members content with that approach?
Yeah, happy with that.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to. Indeed, thank you, Hansard, for coming all the way down to. We give you a break from Stormont, which is as good as a holiday. Agenda item 9, our committee deliberations on the Administrative Financial Provisions Bill. That's page 355 of the meeting pack, members. There's a number of papers related to the bill. A response from the Department of Finance to issues highlighted by the Fiscal Council in relation to the bill. A response from the Executive Office Committee on its relevant scrutiny of its relevant clauses in the bill, which is at page 361 of the meeting pack. The confirmation at page 366 from the Executive Office that its officials will make themselves available to brief us on the 21st of January 2026, which is next Wednesday, helpfully enough. And that obviously pertains to things like the Victim Support Service, which is included in there, and the quite sweeping powers which are given to the Executive Office, the First Deputy First Minister, in relation to violence against women and girls. So if members are content, we'll add these to the evidence base for the committee stage of the bill, and if members are content with that.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 10, which is the Fiscal Council Bill. Again, committee deliberations. We had asked, so we got correspondence from the Scottish Finance and Public Administration Committee. We had asked that committee to reflect on its engagement and interactions with the Scottish Fiscal Advisory Council. That committee has replied, providing examples of how the engagement takes place on a formal and ad hoc basis. So, members, that is in there. If anybody wants to, it's page 369, as I said, if anybody wants to raise any particular points, they are. I would just go back to a point I have made fairly perennially, which is about the absence of the fact that they have economic briefing from the Scottish Fiscal Council. The Scottish Fiscal Council has an economic forecasting remit, as we discussed, in part because there are more devolved local taxes in Scotland, including income tax, than there are here. But that's a personal view around the usefulness of economic forecasting. There's also a what's interesting is they appear to have a separate sessions. Sorry. Yeah, they have because the Scottish Government has a medium-term financial strategy and an annual budget. They have separate sessions of both of those because there's obviously Scottish Fiscal Council documents published. Anyway, it's useful. I think it's useful for us to consider their approach, and I think it's something that we can put as we are going through our Fiscal Council deliberations.
What we do with that, as we've done with other evidence provided, we take that apart and we add it to the bill table. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to deliberations informally around each clause, it means we can pick up what's been suggested across the different oral and written evidence. So the other thing I would flag up is I've been in communication with the Audit Office. They will submit a fairly short response on the Fiscal Council bill. Their particular interest is obviously that they reinforce the suggestions we've already heard from the OECD and so on about independence of the office, but they're also very interested in coming in to talk about where the Fiscal Council and Audit Office will sit together to avoid infringement in each other's remits and to avoid duplication. So if members are content, we seek to get a briefing on that because I think it's a conversation we've not really heard yet.
Okay.
So it would be useful to have them in. Hopefully we could do
members
that
okay with
at the end of February.
Okay. I should just say when we're on that, some amendments have been submitted to the Fiscal Council bill in my name. Members are aware that's in my another capacity. I won't detain people talking about them now. It's really time to debate them at some point in the future. That is there are those are at page 375 of the meeting pack. Agenda 11 is correspondence, which hopefully we can get through promptly. 11.1 is the memorandum of reply to the PAC report on managing the schools estate. That's at page 378 of the meeting pack. That memorandum of reply was published, or was tabled in the Business Office on the 11th of December. It addresses the recommendations in the PAC report. So members, if they're agreed, we can copy the memorandum to the Education Committee given its relevance, but I'm sure the Education Committee will probably have seen it anyway, but we should, as good practice, copy it to them. 11.2 again, Public Accounts Committee, primacy of reports. The PAC has indicated that it has agreed its next inquiry and reviewed its primacy of old reports, and it released reports relating to the Departments of Health and Infrastructure. 11.3 is the pivotal report on Northern Ireland's multi-year budget challenges and opportunities. That was at page 39. That's page 396. Useful response from Pivotal. We have agreed earlier today to get a briefing from Pivotal in the next month or two, so they will no doubt talk us through it then. 11.4 is from the Association of British Insurers. It's a press release. They have indicated they're establishing a task force to examine factors that increase costs for the car insurance industry. That's to note, but I think it would be helpful to be kept abreast if there's anything particularly for Northern Ireland, given it was something that came up. We did take evidence from the ABI in relation to our financial services inquiry, so I think we should, and we know there are particular insurance issues faced by people here that have historically led to higher premiums, so we'd like to keep kept abreast of that. 11.5, annual report of the Lay Observer. It's in relation to legal services. Why, you might ask, we're getting this report from the Lay Observer Legal Services. But that's something that I keep asking. No one apparently finds it as interesting or anomalous as me, so I'm going to stop talking about it. Maybe as a New Year's resolution. That's at page 459 of the meeting pack. To note, 11.6, correspondence from an individual in relation to tuition fees. It's not for us, so we'll forward it to both. We've referred it to their own constituency MLAs and the Department of the Economy. 11.7, again, is correspondence from an individual. There is a specific pack relating to this individual. It will be added to that, and members can review it there should they wish. 11.8 to 11.9 or 11.10, are Hansard transcripts of recent oral evidence sessions, including with Pivotal and the University of Ulster on the Fiscal Council bill and the ministerial briefing on the 10th of December. Those are to note. Agenda item 12 is the draft forward work programme, which is at page 537 of the meeting pack. So, members, next week we have an informal briefing with Chartered Accountants Ireland, I believe, and they want to. They're talking about corporation tax. Members wish to engage. They can let the clerk team know ASAP. There is an oral briefing on reval, which we discussed earlier on. That's on the 28th. And then the 4th of February, we have a oral briefing with internal audit. Okay. Members are going to want to say anything to that? Sorry.
Just know for next week, we are doing the informal with SIPFA with the Economy Committee. So it's organised around a lunch that allows us to overlap. So 12:30 will be the start of the briefing and basically lunch, and that's happening in the private dining room.
All right, okay.
Beside the end of the where we had the lunch, the strategic session
in the corner.
So we've just made it work so that Economy Committee can come to that, and then members for this committee can have the lunch and then go into our committee. The Finance Committee will start at 1:30.
Yeah.
So it just allows that bit of chat and lunch that time.
We also have oral briefings next week on the AFP bill, which will be quite significant. So some of the, as you mentioned, some of the biggies.
Sure, those will be next week and the week after, and that will then conclude our planned oral briefings on the AFP bill.
Okay. So, and we will then probably mostly in February, there'll be a lot of draft budget
briefings, and Chair, we'll be bringing forward our revised terms of reference for the inquiry. We've also got some ideas, Tom and I have been talking about this, some ideas around survey engagement. A lot of what we would really like to hear about is lived experience that doesn't really exist in current data. So we've talked about potentially developing some kind of survey and seeing if the likes of NIPSA would put it out across its membership. It represents the vast majority of civil servants. So it'll be things around, experience. We're trying to get experience at different grades of the issues that have been highlighted, the temporary promotions, sick absence, vacancies are being carried, stuff like that. And really, that was probably the best kind of forum we thought to push that out. And we look at some other surveying as well, but it was kind of trying to get that direct experience. You'll get a lot of ideas too from particularly long-serving civil servants about what hasn't changed, what needs to change. It's just to try and get that out, and it's really the only way to do that. So what we'll probably try and do is the next couple of months it'll be commissioned research and surveying. So we'll develop that and bring it to members for agreement.
Are we going to do? Should we be doing a? So we've got Pivotal and Nevin. Will be asked to come in.
UEPC we'll ask to come for budget.
For budget, do we want the department or the minister to come and brief?
Yeah, well, we'll be getting the department up on that one as well.
Yeah.
We have scheduling for the 4th of February. We're pretty confident on that. No. Oh right, Clarita's not going to move.
We are confident we have them in the 4th of February.
So we're confident 4th of February.
Okay.
And so is the department, it would seem to. So we have various things scheduled in around that. We also have potentially, I think, issues that might come out of talking to the academics that take us slightly beyond the multi-year budget itself into some of the issues that the Finance Minister has raised around potential further revenue raising. There's a number of issues that have been raised actually in the Pivotal paper. I think the committee previously talked about starting to consider things like that. Going forward, a multi-year budget will allow that to happen. Sure, we also will be doing closed session deliberation on both the bills as well throughout February, the latter part of this month. There's a lot to discuss before we get to any kind of formal clause by clause or informal clause by clause. So that pretty much takes us to the end of the financial year at Easter.
Yeah, okay.
And sorry, can I just check, are these all 1 p.m. starts?
No.
Oh.
Not all of them.
Wow.
Most. But not all. Not all.
Oh. Good job.
Thanks. Thanks, Peter.
Okay. Okay.
Just one on the programme. You'll have seen all the conversation recently about the Scottish budget, and particularly with this budget review and what's come from the Scottish Fiscal Council or the Fiscal Authority. Just thinking if we're going to be doing some work later on in the year on the revenue raising and the options of the rest of it, might be useful. I know we don't like political travel very much, but it might be useful going to talk to the Scots or getting some formal how they've done it.
Part of our complexity with that is
they're going to be.
They have elections.
I don't think they think about what we'll be like this time next year. We will probably not be prioritising.
No, that's what after May. I'm not thinking this.
I think we already have tentative timescales, Chair, for the next meeting of the Interparliamentary Finance Committee Forum. Our Scottish and Welsh colleagues are saying they probably wouldn't want to try doing that.
Yeah.
No,
Before June.
you're not going to.
Because they have a different process, so their committees don't form as quickly as ours.
No.
And Wales is just going to be beginning its new 90...
MLA or MS or AM, sorry.
It's more than 90, I think. I want to say it's 96, yeah. I'm just mentally thinking. MSs? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to take a little bit of time. So I think June is probably our earliest we're going to get anything useful.
Okay, grand. Can we ask the department? I think it would be helpful, because I know we have had an annual, but if the minister is willing to brief us on the budget, I don't know whether it's better to do it, but I do think, given we talked about it before Christmas and we were kind of like, well, we might have a budget by then. I do think we need to know.
Do you want to prioritise after executive agreement or as is? Or?
I'm happy to ask them. I'm happy to ask the department whether they think it's more useful or not. But I do think we need, at some point, whether before or after, we need to hear from the minister. He may feel that I think at some point we do need an oral evidence session on the budget with the minister. But it's kind of, and I don't know how close they are to agreement. Or I don't know. But I think we should engage with them on their view. Members are content. Otherwise, we will publish that in the forward work programme.
Yep.
Then agenda item 13 is any other business. Does anybody have any other business they want to discuss? Okay. Date, time and place of next meeting. We are scheduled for our next meeting at 1:30 next Wednesday, 21st of January, in the Senate chamber. Before that, there is an optional engagement in relation to corporation tax proposals. And just for anybody who is listening to this, this is without prejudice, and anybody else who wishes to engage with us on other proposals for or against any issue are welcome to get in touch with us too. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks. I'm going to try to put the question that the committee adjourns. The committee is now adjourned. Oh, before I do, can I unadjourn for half a second? Just to say again, a thank you so much to our team and Colm and everybody at LPS for facilitating that.
It's brilliant.
We are now